Hi, and welcome to this international symposium titled Hands Across the City, Musicians and Handedness in Urban Contexts. So my name is Gabrielle Kaufman. I'm a lecturer here at the Department of Art and Musicology at Universitat Autònoma. I'm a classical cellist by training, and my research interests are related to musical performance, everything from history and analysis of performance to listener perception. And I'm also very interested in the psychological and neurological aspects of performance, so I'm very much looking forward to learning more today about how handedness and laterality might play a role in performance. We have 4 great talks today about laterality and handedness. This might be the first symposium ever dedicated to musicians and handedness. We don't know, might be. And as you can see, we will have some wonderful musical demonstrations as well, as all our speakers on handedness are professional musicians themselves. I will now just say a couple of words just in Catalan, in case anyone listening is more local, and then I will hand over to Greg, who will also say a few words, introductory words, and then I will introduce our first speaker. Bon dia a tothom. Només volia dir que si algú vol preguntar alguna cosa en català o en castellà, si hi ha algun tema que no s'entén del tot, jo i Greg estem aquí per traduir el que sigui, d'acord? Clar, el simposi es desenvoluparà sobretot en anglès perquè tots els ponents són de fora, vale? I llavors no parlen, a part de Greg, ningú parla en català. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Greg, who will say a few words and then introduce our speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. First, I'd just like to thank our dear beloved faculty of Arts and Humanities and our Department of Art and History and Musicology for all the institutional support, and of course the Office of the Dean for lending us this beautiful space today. Thanks also to Sylvia for her encouragement, to Lidia for being part of the team today as a moderator, and for sharing later her experiences as a left-handed violinist. We'll see what that means. And thanks so much to Francesc for all the administration and logistical support that he has given to make this happen today. In brief moments, he will explain the research project that this symposium is taking part under its umbrella today, which will be very interesting. And of course, I'd like to give many thanks to my wonderful thesis director, Gabrielle, for all of the help getting this happening today, and all of the help with analyzing and thinking about these interesting ideas as well. The idea of this symposium, it actually originated when Francesca first reached out to me by email. I think it's one of the positive stories of social media, that because our interests and maybe the things that we nerd out on YouTube, our algorithms overlapped, and so we became aware of each other, we got in touch. There was some really beautiful timing that Danica had just published her master's thesis on a related topic, and so we were able to form this kind of conversation between the three of us, and I had the great pleasure and fortune to interview Laila several months before that. So the 4 of us got to talking. We realized that we might be among the few people who are very interested within musicology in laterality and performance and handedness and music and how all of those things interact. So we came to Francesc and Gabrielle and Sylvia with this idea, and they very graciously agreed that it would be fun to do, and so here we are today. Why the name of the symposium? The handedness, musicians and handedness, I think that part is self-evident. In urban contexts, well, we're about to find out more about that from Francesc, that is one of the elements of focus of the research project itself. And today we will be talking about lots of different aspects, musicological, pedagogical, neuropsychological a little bit, and all of those within very different contexts and ones that overlap as well. It's true what Gabrielle said, that it's quite possible this is the first symposium of this type. We're not 100% sure, but I've never heard or been able to find another one specifically on musical performance and handedness, so that's exciting, but it definitely won't be the last, and hopefully there'll be many more to come with this group, with other people that we know are out there just looking for a home for their ideas. So we're really looking forward to the future after today as well. But thank you so much for being here, especially to our guest presenters, Laila, Francesca, and Danica, for coming so far to be here today. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm very excited to hear from all of you. And now, without further ado, I would like to pass the microphone to Francesc,
to me first.
to Gabrielle,
To introduce.
to introduce Francesc. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, so just quickly, I just want to introduce our first speaker here. I have the privilege of introducing Francesc Cortès, who has a professorship here at the Department of Art and Musicology at Universitat Autònoma. Francesc is a very prolific researcher who has published hundreds of book chapters and dozens of articles, dozens of books within different topics relating to opera, music theater, Spanish and Catalan music of the 20th centuries and 19th centuries. He has spearheaded 10 competitive research projects, and he's now the director of CRAE, which is the Center of Research for Performing Arts and Music in the Contemporary context. And since Francesc is the principal investigator of the research project Music and the City, which is providing the framework for this symposium, I'm very happy that he agreed to talk a little bit about this research project, which is actually ending very soon. And so we can talk a little bit about the results and what has happened and everything we've learned, which I think will be very interesting. So thank you very much, Francesc, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Well, this is the thanks time. First of all, welcome to this first seminary, and also thanks to Greg and Gabrielle for the organizations and for the idea, because it's the first time that we have a seminary here in the UAB, Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, around music practice. First of all, I will apologize for my English because I have no time of reading and writing nothing, only some notes. Well, now we have different projects in research, but the title of the actual one is the Música Ciudad. This is city music, places, institutions, and musicians from the Industrial Revolution to nowadays. I think one of the more important aspects of our research group is that we are not only musicologists, but first of all musicians. We have bateria, Carlo Fadal, violin, cello, several pianos, one conductor that knows without conducting nothing, and some of the I will talk about different aspects of, for only an introduction to our research group. We are a part of the CRAE, of the Center of Research of Scenic Arts. This is the web if you want to see our activities that are very intense. You have the crae.uab.cat in Spanish, Catalan, English. In fact, this is the first of university research center devoted to the arts scenics. Now we are in the first 4 years, and we have a very, very, very intense activity. But not only this. No.
Can I help?
I don't know. Perhaps pasa. No passa. No passa. What? No? Who's this? Sí, fa coses molt rares això. Ara, ja està. Thanks. Well, we have this, the last symposiums. This is the symposium only 15 days around intellectual property and music in the theater. The last day we have another symposium around the management of 19th century opera houses. This perhaps is for us a very important subject because we have seen that the intellectual property perhaps is so important than creation. And well, this is the last one devoted to the seminar on research performative. Well, in Spain is not very usual the subjects around the performance of music. We have a very active musicology, but from the history in musicology and folk music, ethnomusicology music, but the difference from the British area, German area, perhaps French a little, there are not research around performative one, and I think it's very important because, for instance, the history, what can do? Only books in your library, and if in sciences, for instance, we are need to human body. In music, we have one body that is the sound, and the sound is devoted by music. Well, after this, in the last 2 months, 1 year ago, we have the first one around performative that was around the relations between the opera world and also the MUCA, that was a Congreso Internacional around music and audiovisual culture with the aim of this is Enrique Cabo and also Lidia López, that they have another seminary in Tecnocampus in Mataró. I don't think the nice any much. And others that can arrive in publications, for instance, in Brepulse, Music in Non-Conventional Venue of 19th Century Europe. This book will be in, I think, only 1 week, will be published. Also performing arts and technical uses, also around the lyrical world, and musical exoticisms, and this that has only 2 weeks of life. Music, propaganda, and the Spanish Civil War. Well, and we have other books from the last one project, Microhistoria of the Music Spanish. So it's focused around the concept of microhistory. Microhistory that, for instance, is very interesting in the act of a single person, a single musician. And also very important, this one book, La Canción Española, La Tonadilla. Tonadilla, cupletistas, that in the first half of the 20th century has a very big importance, with Enrique Encabo, Tatiana de Santiago, Inmaculada Matia Polo of the Universitat Complutense de Madrid also, y Enrique Encabo de la Universidad de Murcia. And all the publication important, the Palgrave Macmillan, edited by Lidia López, Music, Sound and Identity in Video Games. Another popular music in Spanish cinema, that was perhaps the first subject of his doctoral thesis. And we have another very big projects. One of these is the historical archive of the Societat del Liceu del Gran Teatre del Liceu de Barcelona. So this is perhaps one of the more important archive of opera in Spain. Perhaps it's the only one that has from the beginnings, in the middle of the 19th century, from nowadays. The other important theater in Spain is the Teatro Real, but the historical archive of the Teatro Real has not continuity. It's cut several times, a part remained in Barcelona, another part in Almagro, but the historical archive of the Society of the Gran Teatre del Liceu has all the documentations, including during the Civil War, with continuity. And for instance, a publication from this archive is the book. It's not easy, I know, to take this because it's a bibliophile edition, but if you can take this, very well, very nice. And on the other star projects is the project around pianolas, the reproduction of the music. His responsibility is Jordi Roquer. No, he's not here because he's now in Italy working around this. This is important because with another of USA University and the University of Bologna are the three only projects that are working around the first systems of reproduction of music. And we have now another project that has started that will be devoted to the cassettes, videos, and other support that we need digitize. This is the engine that we use for digitize music pianolas. This is the engine 1.0 because now we are in the 2.0 or 2.2. This is the first machine that you can understand the music from the Biblioteca Nacional de España, Biblioteca de Cataluña, Eresville, Centro de Documentación de Andalucía, so a very important archive in Spain that have pianola rolls. Another results of our research is the music, the edition of music. This is one of the last, this is the first, well, perhaps the second, Sarsuela Catalana, written by Josep Anselm Clavé in 1858, the title La Plec del Remei. In English, the translation, I think, is very difficult. Remei, remedy encounter. Remedy encounter. Well, gathering. I think we have the English translations inside, but I have not read this. Well, this work was another time la mise en scène in 6 years ago in the Teatre Nacional de Catalunya, and another project from the next year will be the first opera written by a woman, Schiava Regina, of the Luisa Casagemas, that will be played at the Teatre del Liceu in 1 year, more or less. And now we are working in his musical edition. And only 5 minutes talking about one question of the research that perhaps is the precedent of why we are here talking about handedness music with keyboard inverted. For me this will be very difficult. And why we are interested in this? Why? Well, 3 years ago, we have worked around the historical archive of the Theatre of the Liceu, and who are the musicians that are working there? Well, we have here in the beginning of the 20th century, in the 1907, this is the name of different musicians, violin, 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 and for first time we know the names of musicians in an orchestra from the beginning of the 20th, but we have the names of the musicians in the second half of 19th century. Why we are interested in this? Because the music is not only the names of principals composer, but first of all, the musics. And the exams that have the musics and how many earned the music. When the music earns well, then we can study why they can play with the left hand. But when the music's not earn money, it's not important the hand, right? It's important survive. And in this survive, never we have the idea how many earn a music by a year. Well, this is the oscilación de los sueldos diarios. So it's how many money can earn a music. In the contracts in 1882 and 1880, we see that a concertino earned 10 pesetas. Well, the peseta is the money before the euro. Today, 10 pesetas is a 0.05 euro, I think. But in the time was a lot of money. We say that when people have 5 pesetas, he could do a dinner for a lot of people. And a house, the price of a house was around 1,000 pesetas and 2,000 pesetas. Then the concertino earned in this year 10 pesetas, but 20 years after, they earn the same money. And with the inflation, I think this is the correct term, yeah? Has surmounted it. Very important after the disaster of the War of Cuba. Before the War of Cuba, 1 peseta is equal to $2. After the War of Cuba, 2 pesetas are $1. So it's 200%. Then violin tutti, 4 pesetas, here a little more. 6, trompa solo, go down, arpa a little more, and campanologo, that is not the same. But we have corrected this with table economical. This correction should be that the contracts from 10 pesetas arrived only to 10.5. Violin tutti, the 46, and could be 4 that do. And how many they can survive with this? No, from the moment we have the name of all the members of the Barcelona Theatre of Liceu Orchestra, and we have also from what other orchestras they come. The most part, they are musicians from the same orchestra del Liceo. The other half are coming from other theaters of the city. Only 7 are from French and Cuba. 11 are from other part of the state, and 5 of them have no experience in orchestra. Van a probar. And what's the question of these salaries? The question of these salaries is that with 10 pesetas for a year, they have survived only from the month of January to last May. And for this reason, they should work in other orchestra, and they should have students and be professors. Nowadays, all the things have changed, for fortuna, but perhaps not sufficient. And I think this is the reason why we are here with this first seminary. I wish will be very interesting for all of you. And now, if there survive someone in the other part of the virtuality world, if you have some questions from
yes,
that.
Exactly. If anyone has a question for Francesc regarding this project.
I just have one question, just for me to clarify. Were these daily salaries?
No, this is only, no, daily, no, this is month's salaries.
1 month.
1 month.
Wow. So 2 dinners, 2 big dinners a month.
Only 2 dinners,
Wow.
only 2 very dinners. This is the reason, because this is the contract of a salary by a month. Well, and the inflation, more or less in these years, was around in Spain from the 5%. This is very, very less, because the one of economic problems in Spain, that is the country have no gold, have no money. Then we have no money, and they have no solution for create new money. The prices are more or less very stability, but the price is increasing, and this is absolutely insufficient for a family to survive in 1 month only with this. Then should work in several places. It's very usual that a musician from the orchestra of the Liceo, they play in another orchestra, and they made that in Spain we say bolos. Bolos is occasional kids concerts, and also they are professors in other parts. But this was the first orchestra stable. So in 10 years, they could be usually in the orchestra have a stability of a part of month salary.
My question is, and how often a month they have to play? Every evening, or is this just
Oh.
4 times a month? Is there any?
Well, more or less, the opera they play in the evening. They have the rehearsals in the morning, but they don't play each evening. They, for instance, play in Monday, Wednesday night, and Thursdays play in another part. And in the beginning and the morning, they could play in a mass. They play in the bright. They can play by night when finish the representation of opera. They play in the cabaret. Cabaret, or on the different theaters of the Paralelo of the Barcelona. The Paralelo of the Barcelona have a lot of theaters that they are in music constant, just 3, 4 hours, 5 hours of the new days.
But there they got another salary, maybe
Yeah.
some other places.
Yes.
Wow.
But the other part of the salary is not stable. It depends. For example, if a theater have a zarzuela for 2 months, they are contracted only for these 2 months. When this production finish, and there are zarzuela, and there are work of theater with no orchestra, they finish it. And perhaps they will have incidental music with 7 or 8 musicians. They remain only 7 or 8 musicians. In Barcelona exists a sindicat de músics de Barcelona. I think with a very, very, very interesting documentation. All has survived only a very little part. Perhaps in the Civil War, I think was not burned, it's vanished in the particular house, and I think it's very important because it's very usual the musicians go to the Syndicat of the Music by the morning and asking for today we have some orchestra for play. I have play for, they could play the beginning, they could play for all a week. It's very, 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 very necessary.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask a more general question. If there's anything that, I mean, during this project and the work you've done here in Lyceum, if there's anything that surprised you, or anything that you didn't expect to find?
Ah, well. Well, no. This is a very part interesting that now we are working in a history of the musician, but searching the descendants, so the family of different members that have some photos, documentation that has survived in the family, and we will try to do a memory history of the musicians. So in the page of the archive of the Societat del Liceu, we will be open another web that was the web of the musicians and the workers. For instance, I have a contact with concierge, more or less. See?
Well,
that have un raspall. Sí, que tenia un raspall per als abrics de la gent.
yeah, we have like a closet where they...
Yes, in the winter, yes. They have some objects, and we can reconstruct these micro-histories of the musicians and other workers around the opera theaters and the music.
You're focusing on the history of musicians in Spain, but are there other researchers, I don't know, maybe around Europe that are doing the same thing that maybe would be interesting?
Yeah. Now we have a doctoral thesis that is working with a composer from French, and another subject after this will be the circulation of singers from Spain and other parts, and other parts from Italy and French, and they come in Spain, and after these companies traveled to America, to Mexico, USA, and other parts of America with the same repertoire that they play it in Spain and traveled all around. It's a lot of, well, we are a little people working in this. This is one, because we have also the piano rolls, the music, ludo-musicology that I don't tell around this morning, but there are very different lines of our research.
Yeah, maybe you can actually say, because I don't know if you said in the beginning, how many people are in this research project, because it's a lot. And
well, more or less the group you are 15. Yes, yes. If we are talking around all, we are around 28 from the University of Oviedo, Universitat de Murcia, Castelló de la Plana, Universidad Pública de Navarra y de Alicante, Universidad de Alicante. Ah, bueno, sí, conta. I'm from the Universitat de Barcelona. We have two collaborators, sorry. See, because they are understand me and with the mistake. And after we have contacts with several European universities from Montpellier, Paris Sorbonne, Rennes, and underdown in Australia. So Melbourne University.
Thank you very much.
And now,
Thank you so much, Francesc, for that lovely introduction. Now we're going to introduce our first speaker on laterality and handedness, which is Danica Hobden. Danica, she's a guitarist in with different styles and different genres. She has actually a bachelor in classical guitar and jazz guitar from Sydney Conservatoire Music, and she also has a master from Hamburg, right? Yeah, Hamburg was it? Yeah. And so this is the title of her abstract, Folk Songs for Inverted Guitar Practice-Based Observations on Playing Guitar Transcriptions Upside Down. And so Danica is going to talk as well about a little bit the historical aspects, talking about different guitarists, and as well her own practice as a guitarist, how this all plays out when you're on stage and when you're doing your projects. So we're going to give the floor to Danica. Thank you.
I will try to flip them. Yeah. Do you think it's all right?
Yeah.
All right. Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here with a group of like-minded musicians today to speak about handedness in urban contexts. The topic that I wanted to present under the title Folk Songs for Inverted Guitar is a short overview of some of the practice-based approaches that I've been applying to inverted guitar playing based on observations from analyzing transcriptions. Why undertake such a project? What led me to want to research this topic for my master thesis in Hamburg came out of frustration, but also out of curiosity. Throughout my guitar playing life, I've encountered situations where I needed to play a right-handed guitar upside down. For left-handed guitarists, this is a very common occurrence when I'm teaching, when I'm meeting with other musicians in music stores, or any situation where I don't have my own guitar with me. Even today, for this symposium, since we're all coming from different cities, we had to source some left-handed instruments. Whereas if we had all played right-handed, it would be very uncomplicated to borrow instruments. I remember that already after a year of learning guitar, when I was at school or at a friend's house, I would start to mentally flip what I'd already learned left-handed so that it could be played upside down on a readily available right-handed guitar. That can work for more simple music, but the frustration of studying and devoting oneself to an instrument for 2 decades, yet at the same time being unable to play anything of complexity on a right-handed guitar is something I wanted to turn around into a source of inspiration. A quick overview about inverted guitar. When one plays a guitar upside down or inverted, the lowest pitch string is now on the bottom, and the highest pitch string is on the top. This could be compared to reversing the notes of the piano so that the pitch runs from high to low. These new factors turn the instrument on its head and prompt musicians to think completely different about how they play their instrument, with impacts on rhythm, pitch, and direction. When researching and interviewing players, I felt like there was little insight into what was musically happening on the guitar when one plays inverted. So I've been transcribing music from inverted guitarists throughout history and present day, with the aim of compiling tools and resources which could provide a framework for inverted guitar repertoire. The fact that most inverted guitarists are self-taught means that there's not much methodology or pedagogical material for guitar. The guitarists I analyzed or interviewed, for example, Dick Dale, Albert King, Finnish producer Otto Summun, Mish Fambro, and a Hamburg-based session musician Jörn Heilbutt, it was very clear that they had all found their personal style that was too personalized to work as a methodology for all inverted players. The joyful part of this is that there can be no rules yet, and has led to some very curious and inventive ways of guitarists working around this new instrument. A well-known example of this is Elizabeth Cotton's finger-picking technique, which she calls cotton picking, or Dick Dale, who is most famous for his version of Misalou, playing horizontally rather than vertically on the guitar. Almost all of the guitarists I investigated would have been born before widespread access to the internet, meaning they wouldn't have had the resources or video footage that we do now. This begs the question as to whether we will see a pattern in the future of fewer inverted guitar players, because they might restring their guitar and learn with standard technique upon seeing a video of this, for example. I divided the methodology into two approaches. The first approach for gaining insight on inverted guitar is coming from transcriptions and interviews of guitarists who play like this naturally. Unlike myself, I play a restrung guitar left-handed. I found that often the guitarists who use chords in their playing were flipping standard chord positions, that is, shapes that are quite common in guitar language, drop 2 and 3 inversions, or open position chords that one often sees in pop and rock music. However, there were some exceptions. Both Mich Fambro and Jörn Heilbutt, who I got to interview in Hamburg, used some irregular shapes that I would not have normally come across in standard tuning. Otto Sormün said to me in an interview that he found, for example, the standard G open chord, which is one of the first chords that one learns on the guitar normally, was particularly difficult for him flipped, and that he also used drop D tuning to help with bar chords. Awkward hand positions for chord shapes also lead inverted guitarists to employ either open strings or preferring melodic lines over chordal playing, such as Albert King, who mainly played blues licks between his vocals. King said in an interview with Alan Paul, "I can play chords, but I don't like them. I don't have time for them. I'm paying enough people around me to play chords." It can be a personal preference as well, but I think many inverted guitarists preferring to play melodically over harmonically indicates to me that chord shapes inverted are not as intuitive. As a case study, I wanted to transcribe some Elizabeth Cotton tunes, finger-picking folk guitarist who uses a lot of open string positions in her playing. Elizabeth Cotton is one of the most famous examples of inverted guitarists. She is now quite well known, especially because her song Freight Train has become a standard in folk music. And the fact that her career took off at an older age, she recorded her Grammy Award-winning live album at the age of 92. She was born in North Carolina, America, and plays original compositions and folk tunes from that region. I'll play you now a video of her playing Freight Train. And I can play now an excerpt from a transcription that I transcribed from Elizabeth Cotton. The title is Honey Babe, Your Papa Cares for You. So yes, the strings are now flipped, just to see it in action, that the treble string is facing me, the melodies are now played on the upper string, and the bass line is on the lower part of the guitar. As I mentioned, cotton here is using a lot of open strings, which is indicated by the null, the 0 in the tablatur, and open position chords. So chords that are played more at the lower range of the guitar and are using a lot of open strings. This is a situation where it would be a bit impossible to say whether that is because of the style of Southern folk music using open strings or because it made it easier to play inverted. John Bailey and Peter Driver outline in an article on the folk blues style that it is characterized by guitar-friendly keys and high use of open strings and fits the spatio-motoric function of playing the instrument due to its highly ergonomic and idiosyncratic nature. So this could support the tendency that so many inverted guitarists are playing blues or guitaristic styles of music in preference to chromatic improvised lines due to the added obstacle of an upside-down instrument. As a left-hand guitarist playing different styles of finger-picking guitar throughout my musical life, from folk music, pop music, classical guitar, I was expecting the backwards motion in the transcriptions to feel very unintuitive, but I was surprised to find that it feels quite natural in the hand. The backward motion meaning some of the rolls in that transcription, which are coming from banjo rolls, are normally played forwards, but suddenly when the guitar is inverted, one has to play in the opposite direction. However, when I played through the transcription, some quirks of the inverted hand position become clear. Jörn Heilbuch spoke to me about fingerpicking being his most defining disadvantage. He felt like his right hand, the fretting hand, was very equal to that of a standard player. He said that playing ostinato bass figures with the ring finger is very technically difficult, as the finger is less independent than the thumb. But secondly, because of the tone problems, the thumb has a very fleshy, warm tone, and the ring finger, due to the angle of the attack, can sound quite scratchy. Jörn's personal observation fits in well with Andrew Cohen's 1996 study, The Hands of Blues Guitarists, where he analyzes the thumb posture of 94 American folk blues guitarists. Elizabeth Cotton is also on the list, with the goal of discovering cultural or geographical patterns. All guitarists in the study, except for Cotton, use their thumb for timekeeping, the ostinato pattern, and this is exactly what Jörn was describing as being difficult with the ring finger. This is probably one of the reasons why Cotton developed her signature technique. She called it cotton picking style, where she only used her thumb for melodies and her forefinger for both bass and accompaniment. The forefinger would offer more strength and agility than the ring finger. Because I play on a standard tune instrument normally, I cannot have an unbiased perspective. I will always try to flip the knowledge that I have on my left-handed instrument. So I wanted to work on this approach more to see what material I already had at my disposal that could work inverted. That is, playing the same shapes and material, but seeing a different end result come out. I will play you an example of the theme from one of my compositions, Pescatarian. And now I will play it inverted on this guitar. The same material. This example was the moment where I realized that serendipitously material can function inverted, but somewhat at random, which is why I'm calling it aleatory. The guitar is unfortunately not a mirror. The strings are tuned in fourths of a major third between the G and B strings. Therefore, if we were to think of the guitar upside down, running in intervals of fifths, the major third will still upset the symmetry and make it difficult to predict what the transformation will sound like. In this diagram, just to explain, the tablature here is what I'm physically playing on the guitar, and this notation is what is musically coming out of the guitar on the inverted guitar, and that is the original piece. So you can see a bit of the flipped mirrored effect, an unequal mirrored effect coming out of the guitar. The last chord works, it ends up being the same chord at the end because of some symmetry in the chord shape, which I'll talk about a bit later. I wanted to find some more examples, and it obviously helps if the material is more tonal, because if the piece is very chromatic or harmonically complicated, it will be more unlikely to work. In this example, I'll use Leah Brouwer's fourth study. So here's the audio of the original piece. I will play now the inverted version, playing the same musical material, but on this inverted guitar. Without the incorrect notes. So there was a slight alteration that I had to make when translating the piece to inverted tuning. The open A bass string on a normal standard stringed guitar was clashing with the otherwise D natural minor tonality, because that ends up being B natural in this inverted tuning. So whenever this note appeared in the score, I played a different open string, but that was the only note that clashed out of the whole notation. Lastly, here are a few examples of chord shapes that I found worked both in standard and inverted tuning, however, with very different results. I'll just play the first example, which is a very standard C shape, like this, that one learns on the guitar. I was noticing that some of these very basic chord shapes that everyone knows, when inverted, they turned out to be some more complexer chords, and very aleatoric in the nature of me not understanding the conversion because of this major third difference in the strings. So it was very unpredictable for me. I just had to experiment and find different voicings that I felt, to my ear, sounded musical. Yes, something that I noticed is that the shapes that were physically symmetrical on the guitar and not theoretically symmetrical could be inverted with ease. And that goes for scales as well. Symmetrical scales, like whole tone scales and diminished scales on the guitar, are not fretted symmetrically due to the major third interval again. Therefore, it's more important to find symmetry from a guitar perspective and not a music theory perspective. For example, chords that, just to have a physical example, this shape of a 6/9 chord on the guitar is symmetrical physically, and so would another shape, for example, a -6 shape. So these chords played on either guitar would end up being the same notation. Even though the chord from a music theory perspective is not symmetrical, the hand position is. So that's what I mean by taking it from the physical perspective of the guitar rather than the music theory perspective. The use of open tunings on the guitar also give freedom to the player to break out of standard chord shapes, but my goal was to find methods for left-handed players that didn't involve setting up the guitar. Because otherwise one would simply restring a right-handed guitar left-handed and not consider playing inverted. In the past few years, there's been a lot of excitement in the guitar community around Ella Feingold's method of playing with inverted strings. It has caused a bit of confusion as well, because she and Chris Wiseman and others interested in tuning call it inverted tuning. However, the pitches are still tuned to standard gauge tuning. The invertedness that they are talking about is referring to the string gauge. So for sake of clarity, I would like to call it Feingold tuning, especially to honor Ella, who is an amazing session musician who you all would have heard on different records and is really pioneering the inverted gauge tuning idea. Feingold tuning method is very creative and useful for composing, but like tuning the guitar in open tunings, not so useful in terms of creating a spontaneous instrument for left-handed players, which was my goal. That's why in my thesis I proposed an adaptation of Feingold tuning that can be used for improvisation, but without a great change in tuning. The outer strings are tuned, but the tenor strings, G and D, remain the same. I can demonstrate this later if anyone's interested. Just as Jörn Heilbutt talked of fingerpicking being his greatest obstacle to inverted playing, for any guitarist who has experience on a standard instrument, using scalic patterns from muscle memory will generally not sound very musical due to intervallic jumps. I can demonstrate this quickly because it's self-explanatory when you hear it. So I will just play using my muscle memory from standard guitar in the key of C. I'll improvise something. It's an interesting sound, but because of the unpredictable leaps or the interval displacement, that sound at length after 10 minutes is a bit frustrating for me as an improviser, because I also want to be in control of the language that I'm playing. I don't yet have a good solution to this because I didn't learn the guitar inverted. I found that when improvising using the adapted Feingold tuning, this helped me reduce the unmusical interval jumps. I also had some other scale idea options that I wrote about in my thesis, but chordal-based improvisation is what's working best for me so far. I am just scratching the surface of this topic, and I hope that more research can be conducted to see if there are patterns to be drawn between the few inverted guitarists who have an output of music. And after playing some live concerts on inverted guitar, my observation is that for me, playing melodically is the challenge that stands in the way of being able to play improvised music with other musicians. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danica. Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting, your thesis and your work. During your presentation, I've been thinking in two things. One of them, the first time I saw a guitar player playing an inverted guitar was in a video on YouTube. In the 2001, I think, tour of Roger Waters, Pink Floyd's Roger Waters, in the Flesh tour, where there was two musicians, two guitarists, Snowy White from the band, who played the standard guitar, and the other one, I don't remember the name, but played an inverted guitar, electric guitar. It is, it was a left-handed guitar with the strings inverted. So the high string was up and the low string was down, but it was an electric guitar, so the construction is different than a right-handed guitar. And indeed, he was playing all the solos and all the melodic lines. It was the first time I saw it, I didn't understand anything of it. Why is playing the guitar inverted, but he's left-handed. And another thing I've been thinking is I'm a bass player, and when I saw this concept, actually I tried to play the bass the other way, and the handicap is I'm right-handed, right? But the thinking of playing this way, the bass, that's totally different of the guitar because of the tuning of this third that is not existed in the bass. All the shapes, all of the chords and the intervals were easy. So what do you think about this different bass and guitar and so on?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I want to say two things. There's so many players who play amazing melodic material on inverted guitar. What I was trying to explain is that from the perspective of having learnt the instrument one way, that's my challenge for me personally. But of course, there's so many players out there who are playing incredibly in that way. And also some shorter players, and that music is very chromatic, and it's not just blues licks, it's very complicated music, so that's it's definitely possible. I just don't know how possible it is for me, having learnt one way. And the bass question, that's so interesting, and I've played myself for student concerts or different reasons bass upside down, and I also was happy that it worked, that I could process the shapes, and some shell voicings on the guitar. I feel like a dominant shape or a minor 7 or something like this. I can really see that working out without too much processing. So I agree completely. It's dependent on probably what register you're playing on, because just like bass on the guitar, if we're staying in this register, maybe the language for chords can translate quite well. I agree, and I think that is part of it, the register, avoiding that major third, and maybe the idea of bass playing less chords than guitar. Maybe that's also the role in the music might be a bit easier to flip, but we'll find out today what the answer is. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yes?
My question is about example you showed us about your Brouwer's study.
Yes.
So this concept of playing, of transferring the mechanics of a composition to the inverted instrument. What do you think that this type of experiment can lead your research if you have an interest in pursuing this way?
Yeah, great question. I think I can tell you the reason why I started trying to flip material was that I had a goal of putting this research into practice, and I really wanted to be able to play a set of music, at least, ideally with improvisation with other musicians. But part of flipping the material to generate material was trying to build a repertoire for me personally to be able to present not just one whole set of improvisation, but having different pieces in between. So that I would personally love to find many more examples, so I don't have to rely on the same few that I have talked about. The problem that I'm facing is that it's hard for me to predict what will, by chance, work well, because even if it is in one tonal center, you have to I'm finding that I have to try the ideas out to see if it translates well. There is surely a way of calculating this somehow formulaically, but I also noticed that some voicings, and they were in my chord diagrams, they worked on a technical level, but then when I played it just sounded very muddy. So it's also a bit subjective, and I was also finding that some muddy chords needed to be arpeggiated in the other direction. So there was a few factors at play, yeah. But my intention is to generate material for a repertoire. That would be my intention, yeah.
Have you, because you know, of course, as a left guitar player, I've been through this path.
Yes.
And personally, from my perspective, this approach of flipping the piece to an inverted guitar, it's something I usually do for fun, because the result I get is something that has almost nothing in common with the original piece. Like talking about the content of music. So after realizing that, I thought I should maybe concentrate on pieces that are accessible to play on an inverted guitar, but maintaining the original material. There is a lot of, for instance, 19th century music that is pretty easy and it works. Also a few Bach transcriptions
that work
accessible. There's an Italian guitar player. She has a little repertoire she uses when she wants to try out new guitars.
That's so nice. I would love to find out about this.
Just a few pieces, but also, I mean.
But do you mean the Bach piece would be played thinking upside down because it's a simpler piece, or do you mean that one would play the material sort of inverted?
Well, I don't know if we're using the same terminology, but like the musical result is the original.
Okay, so she is probably mentally flipping the material and playing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the opposite of what you
Yes.
showed with the
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense as well. I guess there's many
it's
approaches
just an
to go
idea
around
because
it.
I've been thinking a lot about this approach, and although it could be interesting, but we have to be aware that the music is not the same, of course. But I mean, of course, we're aware.
Which I find is a nice thing, because I think that I like that it doesn't have the weight of me playing this Brouwer piece, me playing classical music at a concert, at an improvised concert. Then suddenly I can have this mysterious piece that did come from the Brouwer piece, but one wouldn't recognize it potentially.
So just because I'm very curious about this, would you present it as Brouwer's piece or not?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I wouldn't Yeah, or a transcription. I wouldn't say it's my piece, but of course, but I also could imagine playing it ideally slotted between improvised materials, so I'm not sure if they would be announcing the piece necessarily, but that's a great thing to think about. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
I feel like we're kind of opening up, like a parallel universe, like how would music history have been if the majority way had been, the left-handed way? Like what kind of compositions? Because it feels like these pieces show it would be completely different, I think, because of the physicality of the instrument. If you had this kind of inverted guitar, for example, the compositions obviously would be different, and the type of technique developed would have been different, and all the right-handed players would have had to adapt, and all this thing the other way around. Okay, I can just present quickly our next speaker. Thank you so much. So, yes, our second speaker now on laterality is Laila Kirchner, who is a German left-handed cellist, and actually did her bachelor thesis on the left-handed cello. She has also 2 master's degrees in music education from Münster. She specializes in a wide variety of styles, such as Baroque cello, Argentine tango, and Indian music. So that's very, very interesting. She has done a lot of work as well within an association that they have. I guess it's started in Germany, Linkespielt, which kind of left-handed musicians, and so she has done lectures and workshops and articles in that context as well. And today she's going to talk about, as you can see here, left-handed instruments in Germany. And I think it's very interesting because she's going to also take in kind of the more pedagogical aspect of this, the educational aspect into this mix as well. So Laila, please go ahead.
I will use it. Thank you. And on this keyboard, it's okay. Yeah, I will try. Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction and for your warm welcome and the possibility to speak about left-handed instruments today. Since 2012, I've been researching about left-hand instruments. Before that, I didn't even know that there are any left-hand instruments. So it started with the cello, my main instruments, and I was flashed that there are left-hand cellos already, and children are being taught since from the beginning onwards. Yeah, so I was learning, beside my study on the right-hand cello, also the left-hand instruments. And yeah, later I met people from this group of other left-hand musicians, and then we founded the foundation Linksgespielt. And now there are many left-hand playing musicians in Germany and all over the globe who are interacting virtually, but also sometimes in some meetings. And yeah, there I got also a lot of input. And now I started my doctoral study at Cologne University of Music and Dance about this pedagogic issue in Germany, yeah, for left-hand instruments. And today I would like to share my findings and my questions with you. First of all, I would like to start, are there any left-handers in the city of Barcelona? Like, is someone of you left-handed? Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're strangers, but yeah, okay. And does anyone ever try to play in left-hand instruments or an inverted instrument? Or do you know, in the city, you know anyone who is playing inverted instruments?
I know some guitarists, but
Ah, okay, yes.
Not personally, but I remember seeing the orchestra of the Lyceum Conservatoires, some performances. It was kind of 20 or 30 guitarists, and a couple of them were
Oh, okay.
the other way around.
Okay, so with guitar it's in common here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
And violinist too.
Violinist, ah, yeah.
Street musician, but
Ah, okay. Interesting. Yeah, thank you. Never. Okay. Yeah, okay. So first I want to start with some facts about handedness. Contralaterality, this is the interplay between body and brain. So I made a picture there. Movements are controlled by the motor cortex of the cerebrum. This is a big part of our brain. The human cerebrum is composed of two hemispheres. The left and right cerebral hemisphere are connected by millions of nerve fibers, the corpus callosum, which is like a bridge in our brain. Due to the crossing of the nerve tracts in the upper spinal cord, the pyramidal decussation, you can see it here, it's more like here in the upper part. The left side of the left brain part controls the right side of the body, and the right brain controls the left side of the body. And I have colored it with different colors so you can see it. And each one of us has a dominant hemisphere. Now the important question is, if you're right-handers, which is your dominant hemisphere? Yeah, the left side, always the opposite one. Yeah. Yes, this cerebral dominance of hemisphere in controlling the motor function is innate and cannot be changed by training. Also, if you are right with the other hand, it cannot be changed. There are still some initial impulses coming from our dominant brain hemisphere. It's heritable, but it's not yet been fully understood how it is. In hand performance tests, the dominant hand is characterized by greater strength, speed, endurance, and dexterity. We are able to perceive, feel, and gesticulate more with our dominant hand. So, yes. Yeah. When playing musical instruments, we practice with both hands, making a particular effort to improve our weaker non-dominant hand. This raises the question, how can tasks be efficiently divided between both hands during bimanual activities for the forceful, to each hand, and to develop for its full potential. In everyday actions, like you can see, we solve this intuitively, such as cutting a loaf of bread or hammering a nail. The non-dominant hand holds the nail or the bread, and it's like a preparation function, while the dominant hand performs a forceful or precise action. If we apply this principle to musical instruments, it becomes clear that most of them are designed for right-handers. According to the cellist Walter Mengler, who was a pioneer of left-handed instruments in Germany and wrote a book which influenced many teachers, the question is not whether left-handers are able to play on right-hand instruments or not, but rather how to make efficient use of differences in performance between the two hands. In the past, both options were available, in particular for wind instruments. Many flutes had a left and a right hole at the bottom for the little finger. The one not needed was sealed with wax. Here you can see there are always two holes, so they could choose. Also, there were a few daring musicians like Charlie Chaplin or the North Indian master and multi-instrumentalist Ustad Alauddin Khan, who simply played left-handed. He was the founder of a huge gharana, of a huge family, and he was the only one who just played any instrument left-handed. There we have Charlie Chaplin. Pioneers such as Paul McCartney and Jimi Hendrix have ensured that there are now many left-hand guitarists and guitarists, as we heard already. Yeah. Playing string instruments, the bowing hand makes a large and small, fast and slow movements through the space, requiring a great deal of dexterity, strength and stamina. To shape the sound exactly as we imagine it, we must feel the vibration of the string beneath the bow, so that we can influence it through pressure and modulation. The situation is similar with plucked instruments. The plucking hand must hit exactly the right notes. The other hand presses the string down and can help to shape the tone through intensity of pressure and through vibrato, but it tends to have a preparatory function like holding the nail or the bread. Playing woodwind instruments, the dominant left hand is positioned either at the bottom, like the recorder. I have one. So my dominant hand will be held here in the bottom, or outside, here like the flute. I have my dominant hand outside because it's more far away from my body and has a bigger holding function, which makes holding the instrument easier and increases the awareness of the instrument. Like if I have my dominant hand on the end of the instrument, I have the feeling, I feel the whole instrument and not only the half of it. Because for me it's like this, I have more feeling in my dominant hand. With brass instruments, the valves of the trumpets are operated with the left hand. The French horn is stopped with the left hand. Many are saying the French horn is a lefty instrument because they operate the valves, but the stopping is a very important part. And the slides on the trombone are moved with the left hand. This allows a fluent breath, better posture, and more resonant tone. On the piano, the left hand plays the leading melody on the high keys, while the right hand accompanies in the bass. I just can make a very short demonstration. Later I will play a bit more. Switch off. I don't know what was happening. We will solve this later. So, yeah, and on the percussion instrument, the left hand and with the use its strength and emphasize to the beat, to lead the patterns and to create a precise rhythm. Like here on the drum set, we just have to return them. And this is an Indian tabla player. And very recently only I found out that those tabla players who are left-handed, they play left-handed. On the tabla, this is the main instrument, and the bass drum with the right hand. Yes, but who's playing such mirrored instruments in a mirror way and who is teaching them? In November 2024, I did a survey among public music schools in Germany, and 128 out of 933 heads of music school responded, which is about 13.5%. The data are published in the music pedagogical journal Üben und Musizieren, which means practice and making music. It's a journal in all music schools. In April 2006, it was published. In this diagram, you can see the instruments which are already taught left-handed in numbers and music schools out of the survey. The guitar has by far the most possibilities, as you can see, followed by the drum set, the violin, and other string instruments. Some wind instruments follow. Very few reed instruments and key instruments are taught, so some reed instruments aren't there already. In another survey among instrument makers and dealers, this survey confirmed these findings. Musikhaus Thomann, which is a huge music house in Europe, sold more than 20,000 left-hand guitars a year, which is about 4.5% of all the guitars sold by them. Bernd and Marx, which is a company, a violin making company from Chemnitz in Germany. They rented about 43 lefty string instruments a year and sold about 11. But many local violin makers also sometimes they exchange the instruments, but some are also building lefty instruments and renting them. I know some of Dortmund who's renting to the children many left-hand instruments. Viento, which is the first company who made left-hand side flutes, sold about 4 to 5% of their flutes as left-hand instruments the year. Reed instruments have to be custom-made, and they charge a huge extra luggage because all claps have to be cast in mirror way. The company Dietz has made clarinets, and the company Mönning has recently manufactured the first professional left-hand oboe. Several companies like Mollenhauer, Möck and Koroy build lefty recorders like this one. Only one piano maker, Blüthner from Germany, builds left-hand pianos and grand pianos, but several keyboard mirrors are able to change the keys of electric pianos. Most music schools support teaching left-handers on left-hand instruments. More than 60% support it in some instruments, about 25 in all instruments, and only 14 are against it or do not have an opinion. Yeah, these numbers show that we speak about a growing important subject, as there are also private music schools and private teachers who also teach left-hand students. And these are only the numbers not of the teachers but of the music schools who have these instruments in their repertoire. Yeah, but how do teachers deal with this subject, teaching students who play in a mirror way? For some it's not a problem at all, and almost the same like teaching right-handed. They say no problem from the beginning onward. Others need quite a long time to get used to the sight, which is strange because it's seldom. Even for me as a lefty player, it's really strange to watch someone else playing like this or to teach this person. In the language of teaching, one can't use anymore the terms left and right hand, like with the cello we say right hand to the bowing hand and left hand to this one, even in orchestra work. But have to use a neutral bowing hand, grasping hand, outer hand, inner hand. If we correct the pose and movements of students, we sometimes have to touch their arms, for example, or accompany movements with the arm. And this is also very strange in case of a left player. If we have to tune a children's instrument, we also have to arrange somehow. Either we play it reverse, or we have to try to bow or somehow play with our other hand. According to Christa Pökönen, who wrote her master's thesis about left-hand instruments, I think she's from, now I saw her in Netherlands, I thought she was from Sweden, but something like this, maybe a Swedish person living in Netherlands. Some teachers, like the left-playing violin professor Terje Moe Hansen from Norway, use mirrors as supporting tools, like placing themselves in front of the mirror to show the student to copy, or placing the left-playing students in front of the mirror just to get an image they are used to. Taking this demand, 70% of respondents of the survey were interested in further informations and workshops about handedness, retraining, experiences of left players and instrument makers, which in my opinion is a huge demand. Taking it seriously, we should implement the subject into basic training of music teachers in the conservatories, so that each teacher is prepared and can work with left instruments. For this reason, I'm planning my doctoral thesis as a design-based research study to develop a curriculum for the subject-specific music pedagogy in higher music education. So many teachers in music school already does it, but they don't have any preparations. So my conclusions are, music teachers should consistently ask about handedness in advance. Some left instruments are available in shops and should be kept in stock or ordered. Others should be developed and supported by foundations, like some reed instruments. It's very costly for the musicians, and many don't teach children because it's too costly for them to pay €2,000 extra charge. All children should be allowed to try both types of instruments out and on their own pace and decide which feels better for them. And children intuitively pick up instruments the way they feel right to them, if they are allowed to and if they are not influenced in advance. Even by pictures, this is an influence. And if right-handers feel comfortable with lefty instrument, it should be allowed to them. Maybe later we find out for right-handers in some instruments it's better. I don't think so, but maybe. In the case of left-handers who experience difficulties in the right-hand position, one should determine whether it might be connection with with a playing style and offer to try out or to switch to the left playing style if children really have trouble. The cello teacher Mechthild van der Linde reports on a left-hand pupil who after 6 months using a lefty instrument was able to play better than 6 years prior using a conventional cello. So this was her enlightenment, and now she is teaching all left-handers on lefty instruments. Now I would like to explain some findings about my own learning process. Like you can see, I play several instruments right-handed, some European, some Indian instruments, and in some instruments I switched to the left hand position. After 20 years of cello training in right-handed position, I started to learn to play the instrument beside of my bachelor study in the left-handed way. It was a training process from the beginning onwards, because in the cello we have very different functions with our both hands. Especially my right hand was in trouble with all this stopping, and I didn't know. Here I was used to, but I really had to, make this stretching functions. I continued my studies right-handed, and I'm still playing both positions. With such a long time gap, I can't reach my right hand level at all. But my left hand bowing feels much more powerful. I can suddenly feel the string beneath my bow, and I get energy out of my playing. In the right hand position, I always lost so much of energy. I was so exhausted after orchestra, after anything. So from the beginning on, although it was very difficult for me to learn the left hand playing, I got energy. I was refreshed after some hours playing. It was strange, but it was my observation. The transfer of body knowledge is working into both directions, so that I also was able to improve my right hand playing, learning from the feeling how it should feel the bow in the left hand. So now I just will demonstrate just a bit on a righty cello. This is something Greg and me were discussing. In my opinion, the cello is really made for the right hand. In this way, it is even tuned with the strings, because we have a thick, low string which needs a lot of pressure, and I can use my arm wide to just make a tone. And here I have to make an uplifting and can play. And if I now just play on a righty cello left hand, I have to uplift here and have to pressure here, which is, it's not comfortable. So I just will. Short way, and now playing in this position. jump over the piano because I have to arrange something. In the past, I practiced the right-hand flute for 1 year, but I didn't feel comfortable and didn't improve. So after arranging many pieces for flute and cello, as I have a tango duo, Plata y Madera, I wanted to play the pieces also on my own. So I bought a lefty flute just to try out, and it feels very naturally and normal for me. I just play some small piece I composed. So, yeah, it really from the beginning on was very easy to play this instrument, and I can observe the instruments I play first time or I didn't play since 20 years, like the cello. It's very naturally, very easy for me to take them up in the left-hand position. I tried the clarinet, I tried the viola da gamba and anything, so yeah, it's a good feeling, but on the cello, you know, that's 20 years is not as easy to yeah, have on the other side. Now I will try on the piano. Maybe I switch off this. No way, we have to do it later because someone switched it off and it somehow doesn't work.
Yes, it's time already, so...
Yeah, I just speak a bit of the piano. Like playing the piano in the mirror way, I was able directly to play pieces by heart because my brain was already able to to switch to the lefty side from the cello. But the output was dreadful and it didn't encourage me to play regularly. And in 2025, together with the software developer Pascal Libuszewski, I developed a keyboard mirror which not only exchanges the keys but also increases the volume, because on electric pianos the low tones they are very softened, so if we just exchange the high notes where we play the melody will be too soft. So if we increase the high and the volume of the high notes, the output is like in a normal right-hand piano. And yeah, this we programmed on this Bohm box, which is available by the Musikhaus Thomann, and they put the program on it for free, so anyone can use it, because I thought for me it's such an improvement that anyone should use it. And in my second master study, I explored the North Indian instrument tabla tarang. This is an instrument, there are 14 tablas in different sizes and tuned as a scale and arranged around the player. And only with a mirror arrangement I felt comfortable. First I got depressed when I was playing, and then my father is also left-handed. He said, just return them. And from that onward, it was easy for me to play. And developing playing techniques and compositions to this, also composing some pieces to this instrument, because it's a very, very unknown and rare-played instrument. And the alteration of the hands became an important issue, and therefore I want to show a video. Can you start it? Yeah, you can see there are 2 octaves, and this is actually a piece with many reverse parts. So the second part is like a reversation of the first part. And I mean, in the outer instruments, I also always have to use the hands who are there, but it takes quite a long time to just writing a piece and then arranging the hand movements, how I alter the hand, not always one by one. Traditional players were playing only with a dominant hand, almost, and only one tone with a non-dominant hand, but I found for me a way where both hands are almost equally used, but maybe the dominant hand a bit more. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laila. That was very interesting, very illuminating on a lot of different topics. We're kind of running out of time to do the coffee break, but if we have maybe 1 or 2 questions, quicker questions, and then we'll go to the break.
Probably pick one, but I'm completely out of the topic here. But when you tried changing the side of the cello, isn't common to also change the strings of plays?
It is, but we didn't find a lefty cello here in the area, so I couldn't bring mine along. I have different cellos. I have a lefty and a right
So
hand
when
cello.
you're speaking about changing, you also have your strings in the other way around.
I have to get in completely different instruments because it's not only the strings, but inside of the cello you have this bass bar beneath the bass string, and you have the voice here, the stick. So they would break if you exchange them, because this pressures with 80 kgs on the top of the instrument. So in small children's instruments, up to a half cello, you can exchange. In violins also up to I think 3/4 violin, you can just exchange the strings, but it will not sound beautiful.
Yeah, but this change of this position with another cello, of course, wouldn't solve the problem of the pressure in the lower string.
Yes, it would. Yes. Then I don't have the problem. I just said it because this one is not a lefty cello, and if I play lefty on it, it's completely stupid. Yeah. I think so. Maybe there will be once a cellist who says, oh, it's very good to play on reversed instruments, but in the cello case, I would say no. Yeah.
I have a very short question. When you showed us the slide about teachers' challenges,
Yes.
you mentioned the tuning support. That was not very clear to me. Could you explain?
Like if you tune string instruments, you normally take them in the position you play it. Like children, I mean, you can sit in front of the child and dream, but actually you take the instrument and tune it very fast because it takes too much time. Always let the children tune. So then you take an instrument you're not used to play, so as a teacher you at least should be able to play open strings, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's clear.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just wondering if there's any, I don't know if there's any statistics on, I mean, because you're talking about how many, instruments maybe are sold or borrowed and are left instruments, but I was wondering the statistic on who's actually left-handed among musicians, and if, what's the possible growth here? I mean, because I imagine still most musicians, like Lidia, they still play with right-handed instruments, even though they're left-handed, right? So I'm wondering, how far away are we from a position where, most left-handed musicians would be?
I don't know how far we're away from it. Most musicians, I think still most left-hand music students will play right-handed. And there are still some upcoming young musicians who study already in Germany and study left-hand. They're playing from the beginning on. The principal cellist of the Berlin Philharmonics, I think he has a nephew who is a very good lefty playing cellist. He says we should encourage this and we shouldn't anymore force them to play right-handed. But it's still a long way to go. But I did this away because I didn't know, and I said some say many people support, some say no one is supporting. So I wanted to get at least some numbers. And I was impressed how many music schools supported, how many are already taught like this. I mean, not the guitar, this is normal, I think, in many countries. But yeah, I didn't expect this. So let's see in which directions. At least I think teachers should be educated about the subject and should be having opinion about it by having ever tried some instruments, not only I don't know, I don't deal with it. So they should be educated at least, and then they can choose, and in the best way let the children choose.
Yes, because I think there's a much wider cultural thing, and I'm not going to go into the whole brain thing now, because really later, because it's really a big topic with the hemispheres, but I do think, for example, it depends on the instrument. Like we said, I think piano will take a long time to do anything about, because a pianist needs to have an instrument wherever they go, and so how many concert halls you're not going to have two pianos, one for left hand and one for right hand, and I mean
in each room.
yeah, exactly, and the conservatories, right, two in each room. So I mean, all of these things I think are against that. I think that's different with guitar or string instruments, where at least you have your own instrument that you can take everywhere. But I think orchestras, you have this whole thing, like, imagine Teatro del Liceo, if like they're all playing against each other, and the string, the both are all going in the different directions, and that's considered, like, it's not aesthetic, it's not how we think about an orchestra, where every movement is the same, and so and that goes against this idea that, are they going to accept a left-handed, cellist to an orchestra? I don't know, like, they're definitely going against the other ones. And that's, so I think there's a cultural thing as well, like with what we think of an orchestra, aesthetics, they're all in black clothes, this whole, ritual thing where, it really
I mean, this is
going also to that, the prospective sound, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We just turn
Exactly,
around like
exactly.
the others now with the modern changes. I feel like they are like, don't sound as they were in the
If you're sitting
traditional.
on, exactly.
How can be one violin just?
One of the violins are in the other direction.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if you
Of course.
yeah.
They all in the same direction, because there are no
They're gonna
space
clash.
in the
Clash.
direction of the left hand.
They could clash, yeah, exactly.
Yes, and also with the flutes.
Yeah, these are the traditional arguments against it. And but there are already some playing in orchestras. It's not a problem of space, maybe about 10 centimeters only, or 5. It's really, if you have the good sitting position, it's not a problem at all. If you place the first violins there and the second violins there in the orchestra, which is sometimes so, your argument, it's like the whole group is playing in the wrong direction. I mean, the argument you brought in. Yeah, but there's a whole group in the wrong directions, we could say.
Yeah.
So, and in contemporary music, they're all playing in different directions, and even some voices, like if I don't hit the cellist beside, I hit the viola player. In orchestras, if it's very close, like in a theater or in the opera, they have very few, they always hit each other. So playing right or left-handed, it's not a deal. I played in a university orchestra in Dortmund, just to try it out. The first practice session, it was catastrophic. Like, each one was confused by my bowing, and even myself. But after 2 sessions, it was not a problem at all. And in the concert, no one was recognizing. And once we had a photographer, and he wanted to make a photograph of the whole orchestra, and then he said, "This woman on the cello, just a bit more right, no, a bit more left. Now turn a bit." And everything was laughing, because he didn't recognize that I'm playing left-handed. But something was wrong. Yeah. So and even I heard of some other musicians who said, "What, you had played left-handed in this session? Couldn't be, like in Bach Weihnachtsoratorium." So and another left player, no. And then I said, "Yes, they played." "Yes, but in orchestra, it must be difficult." So people don't recognize, but they have these this picture, it should be difficult. I think if there are some lefty players, it's normal at all. Yeah, yeah. Because it's the energy. Finally, we feel like making a down bow and up bow. So this is an energetic thing. So it doesn't matter in which direction one is stringing. And children who come up with both types, it's very normal for them.
Yes. No, I'm thinking more of this, aesthetic conventions, because classical music, it's an area that is very difficult to change things, and we have the same ritual that we had in the 1860s, basically.
Yes.
So I mean, that's this thing. I can just imagine how difficult, this thing will be to change.
The first cellists in Germany who played left hand were right-handers because they had some injuries on the left hand. They were not able to finger with the left hand, so had the exchange. And one, he is now a member in Flandern in the orchestra because in Germany he was not enabled to play in the orchestra, but this is long time ago. Yeah, and I hope in future it will become normal for them. Yeah.
We'll discuss more.
Yeah, we will.
Round table, and then we can get into deeper. Okay, so now we have a
Thank you.
break. Thank you again, Laila. So, welcome back again to the second half of this morning sessions that we have on laterality and handedness. Now, time has come for Greg Gottlieb to deliver his presentation. He's a co-organizer, of course, of this symposium, and he's currently preparing his PhD thesis on these topics here at the Department of Art and Musicology. And before that, he did a master's thesis at Middlesex University in London. And of course, he's an Australian musician and researcher that, interested in all these topics that he will explain to you. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. Before I begin, I'd just like to say again how happy I am that we're all here today in person and online to talk about these niche topics that are very close to my heart. So here is the title of my presentation, and a logical question is, what does this word idiodextrous mean? We've actually already been hearing about the concept this morning, and we've seen Danica demonstrate it. Idiodexterity is the uncommon phenomenon of musicians who play string instruments upside down and backwards, reversing the conventional pitch order of the strings in relation to their body. Etymologically, it's a classic Greek plus Latin mashup, combining the prefix idio, meaning personal, like in the word idiosyncratic, for example, with the adjective dexterous, meaning skill with the hands. Though the phenomenon has always existed, I believe my coining of the novel term idiodextrous might be the first attempt to establish its nomenclature in academic literature. I invented this word 10 years ago out of pure necessity. In 2016, I published my master's thesis on the few double bassists in the history of jazz who have played this way. I needed a word to describe their handedness approach to the instrument without repeating lengthy descriptions. Words like upside down, backwards, inverted, and flipped are much more frequently used terms, but as we have discussed within our research group, they can sometimes give rise to ambiguity over whether we're talking about idiodexterity or playing a left-handed instrument, which is a mirror image of a right-handed one and doesn't cause that inversion of the pitch order. So I did that typical academic trick. I defined the term up front, and I use it as a shortcut ever after. As useful as I'm finding the word to be, it has some obvious limitations. We're living one of them in this moment right now. Until the word goes viral and breaks its way into popular culture, every time it's used, it still needs a full explanation. In 2021, the word idiodextrous was cited in an academic publication for the first time. On social media, it occasionally pops up being used by musicians I've never met to describe their own way of playing. That warms my heart, of course, but it touches on another issue with the word, the tendency in academia to put labels on people that haven't chosen those labels themselves. The words we use to self-describe play a role in how we build our identity. Whenever possible, I prefer to ask the musicians how they feel about the word and if they'd be happy to be described that way. My PhD here at the Autònoma expands my focus to include all string instruments in all styles of music from all around the world. While this vastly widens the field of view, 4 main lines of research carried over from my master's help to maintain the project's structural integrity. These 4 original lines of research are instrument, body, language or musical vocabulary, and identity. Today, I'll emphasize the relationship between identity and body, especially brains, but I'll also briefly touch on the other 2. I want to give a really quick demonstration of some of the ways that an idiodextrous approach interacts with this beautiful instrument that you see here. Like most string instruments, the double bass has both external and internal asymmetries. For example, the most obvious one is the asymmetry of the pitch order of the strings that Danica mentioned earlier. If I play this bass in the way considered to be the right-handed way, standing over here, the lowest pitched string is closest to my body. And if I play the same right-handed instrument left-handed, standing over here, the highest pitched string is closest to my body. There are also a few less obvious external asymmetries related to string order, like the curvature of the bridge and the fingerboard, the shaping of the nut, and the order of the tuning pegs. The internal asymmetries are even more subtle. Unless we're a luthier working on the bass, they're invisible. There's a wooden rod called the sound post, or l'anima, which means the soul in Catalan, very nice name, el alma in Spanish, that's wedged by pressure, as Laila had mentioned earlier, between the treble foot of the bridge and the back of the bass. The treble foot meaning the one that's under the highest pitched string, and that's held in place by pressure. And its job is to transfer the sound from the front of the bass to the back of the bass to create a bellows-like effect between the two to push the sound out of the F-holes. Let's take a look at 3 things that might appear to be limitations of playing the double bass backwards: tone, thumb position, and drops. First, tone. So what happens when you pull the string in the other direction to how the builders of this instrument intended? Instead of pulling towards the bass foot of the bridge and starting your oscillation of the bridge off on a nice free swinging movement, you're pulling towards a stiff piece of wood wedged between this foot of the bridge and the back. So your oscillation of the bridge is off to a bit of a muted start. When I learned this, I thought, oh well, I guess I shall never get a deep, warm sound. But it's not my fault, it's just because I'm playing backwards. Wait. Then I heard Earl May and I realized, oh cool, it is actually just me. You can pull the string in whatever way you want and get a really beautiful sound, so I just need to practice more, basically. Of course, these aspects of the instrument only matter when they interface with the body. Perhaps the biggest physical challenge of idiodextrous double bass is playing in what's called a thumb position, when you reach your fingering hand over the shoulder and around the neck of the instrument to be able to play higher up on the fingerboard. Usually when you want to play higher up, you want to play on the higher pitched strings. And as you can see, it's quite a bit more of a reach for me than it would be if I were playing in the conventional way. Great, so now I really do have a solid excuse. I'll never be a virtuosic jazz soloist, but it's not my fault. I just can't get up there when I'm playing this way. Then I heard Tony Archer, and I realized, wait, nope, once again, it's just a lack of practice. Awesome. By the way, I'm conscious of the fact that so far I've left out two big elements: how handedness fits into all of this, and what its idiodexterity might say about, or even do to, our brains. I promise that's on purpose, and we will come to those questions later. All I'll say for now is that idiodexterity is inextricably linked to handedness, just not always in the way that we might think. Answering the question of whether playing double bass backwards gives rise to any unique musical vocabulary invites a whole other PhD. A practice-based approach like Danica's or Francesca's would be a wonderful way to investigate that potential. Within the small scope of my one-year master's, I focused on how the relationship between instrument and body affects codified jazz language for idiodexterous bassists. And there is one emblematic example that sums up a recurring observation. There's a very idiomatic rhythmic embellishment in jazz walking bass called a rake, or a drop. The effect is achieved by using gravity to allow the plucking finger to rake across the strings, such that it falls towards the bassist's body. There's a strong case to be made for this movement being ergonomically intuitive, following a kind of path of least resistance for maximum rhythmical reward, usually a nice, smooth triplet feel. Tick-a-boom. For someone playing with the typical string order, that melodic contour of that fill goes from high pitch to low pitch, hence the tick-a-boom. When I interviewed left-handed double bassist Jennifer Lightham back in 2015, she joked that my whole chapter on jazz language could probably be summed up like this.
Interesting thing about Earl, he couldn't go tick-a-da-dom, he'd go tick-a-da-dom.
Yes.
His tick-a-da-das were strange.
Wow. In other words, conventional jazz bassists sweep down in pitch, idiodexterous jazz bassists sweep up. Of course, the sound of a drop, a descending drop, is so idiomatic to jazz walking bass lines that an idiodexterous bassist might look to find a workaround to produce that original descending sound. John Goldsby created one of the most accessed educational resources for jazz bassists that specifically mentions this technique. When I interviewed him in 2023, he had this to say about my makeshift technique.
You have to kind of... You just have to kind of, like you would for an ascending one, you just have to kind of force it in.
That's great to me. That sounded like a real, like a drop. So.
Yes, after all that practice, finally a win. But wait, is sounding like a normal bassist even my goal? This heady mix of validation and crippling self-doubt brings us neatly to talking about identity. Since starting my PhD, I've conducted more than 20 new interviews with idiodexterous musicians. These interviews are semi-structured, beginning with an open conversation to build context and rapport, then moving on to a standardized set of 10 questions specific to idiodexterity. One of these questions asks, to what extent does your handedness approach to the instrument play a part in your identity as a musician and as a human being? Here's a sample of how some people have answered that question.
Well, if people know, they'll probably say, oh, he's that left-handed bass player, so that's kind of my identity. I knew that that's the way I wanted to play the instrument. And there was no telling me it does not feel right this way. It feels right this way.
There could also be a connection to something like creative, intuitive behavior, like a behavior that is modified through the uniqueness of the individual.
Well, I like to be awkward, but I find it's kind of makes me stand out. I can pick up an instrument and go backwards, and not everyone can do that. I might not be able to play as well, but I've got niche skills at learning the little backwards thing.
It's a big part of my identity, and I'll always say on my website I have upside down guitarist. I like to say that because people go, what does that mean? And it's a way to start a conversation and also set myself apart a little bit. I just became passionate about like being able to be myself and show my weird brain and creativity without it being this whole daunting thing.
I also ask a pair of questions that I think help form a more nuanced understanding of someone's idiodexterity. What do you remember about the first time you picked up a string instrument, and why did you decide to play the instrument the way you do? The answers often bring up a range of social environmental factors that highlight the intersectionality inherent to studying idiodexterity in context. Potential future lines of research could look at how availability of instruments, exposure to musical iconography, and freedom of choice correlates to issues like gender, socioeconomic status, cultural and family traditions, or whether someone grows up in a rural or an urban context. Today, I want to focus on how these origin stories might feed into our notions of identity. How early might idiodexterous musicians begin to construct narratives about ourselves as people who do things differently, if we do form that self-image at all? Electric bassist Mono Neon has posted old VHS clips of his 3-year-old right-handed self holding a toy guitar upside down in the left-handed orientation. Idiodexterous double bassist Lyles West not only has photos of his 5-year-old self playing ukulele upside down, his family has an anecdote that his mum used to put a guitar in his crib to soothe him as a newborn baby, and that he would pluck the strings with his left hand rather than his dominant right hand. Of course, we know that humans often retroactively create narratives. Mono Neon has footage and Lyles has photos, but can any of us actually remember being in the crib? Here's how I tell my origin story. When I was around 15, I found my mum's old acoustic guitar. I didn't know how to pick it up, so I intuited that my dominant right hand would finger the notes, since that seemed the more complex task, and that my non-dominant left hand would strum chords with a plectrum. The first time I played with my friends, they said, "You know you're playing upside down, right?" And being a moody hormonal teenager, I said, "You know what? Maybe you're playing upside down." It was a small act of defiance made mostly in jest, with little thought that I'd ever make music my occupation. But something clicked that meant I never again questioned that way of playing. Until 15 years later, when I started researching it, of course. By the way, if anyone's been listening like a detective, you might have noticed that I've just mentioned 3 idiodexterous musicians who hold the instrument in the way considered to be left-handed, and who are all naturally right-handed as people. I promise that we are about to get to that. But first, a quick break for a word from our sponsors, methodology. My main focus is clearly on qualitative primary research. I'm interested in the people playing the instruments. But I do nevertheless plan to zoom out and look for quantitative trends. Enter this unruly spreadsheet. The basic idea is to track recurring themes across both primary interviews and secondary sources, counting their instances to produce a snapshot of what trends might be detected among the practices, backgrounds, and attitudes of idiodexterous musicians. The sample size is currently too small for the resolution of the data to warrant sharing anything conclusive yet, but some trends are beginning to appear. Another way I'm approaching the methodological challenge of transforming qualitative research into quantitative data is by designing a questionnaire to be distributed to idiodexterous musicians in lieu of being able to do a more lengthy interview. It may sound like I'm on some epic quest to discover the true core of the idiodexterous soul. Yes, I am personally fascinated by the endless plurality of being, but I do believe that identifying trends can be helpful. 2 initial questions come to mind. Is there something we can do to support idiodexterous musicians in their learning and practice, similar to how links gespielt help left-handed musicians? And could the uncommon phenomenon of idiodexterity reveal something interesting about its practitioners? Today, we will focus on the second of these questions. If it might not be realistic to think about identifying an idiodexterous self, is there nevertheless a case to be made for an idiodexterous brain? I can think of at least 2 directions from which to approach this question. The first goes something like this. Is there anything in the brain that might make someone predisposed to adopting an idiodexterous approach to playing string instruments in the first place? While this harkens back to narratives of identity and where idiodexterity might begin, this time we're asking the question from an anatomical point of view. Remember back when we said that idiodexterity is about handedness, but not always in the way we might think? Behold, the HIOS classification system. This concept is the product of my many years of thinking about this topic and is the basis of a forthcoming article. In short, we have 4 variables. H stands for handedness. As Laila mentioned before the break, that's an innate, invisible biological trait of each human. I stands for instrument. Was the instrument built with a body shaped, designed to be played in the conventional left-handed or right-handed way? O stands for orientation. Is the instrument actually held in the way typically considered to be right-handed or the left-handed way? And S stands for stringing. Does the stringing of the instrument in relation to its body conform to the orthodoxy for left-handed or right-handed playing? Identifying L for left or R for right for each variable gives us a 4-character string that classifies a person's handedness approach to playing their string instrument. There are 16 different combinations in total. Now here's the key takeaway. The only thing that defines an idiodexterous approach is the last 2 variables being different to one another. That's what inverts the pitch order of the strings in relation to the person's body. The first 2 factors provide very interesting context, but they aren't essential. So what we have just said is basically the handedness part of someone's handedness approach is irrelevant. That sounds wild to me, but in this specific context, it's true. You can play upside down as a lefty or a righty on a lefty or a righty guitar. The thing that makes your approach idiodexterous is that the order of the strings in relation to your body doesn't conform to the orthodoxy of the orientation in which you're holding the instrument. Thus, for example, Mono Neon, Eric Gales, Lyles West, and I are all RRLR, right, right, left, right. Elizabeth Cotton and Albert King are examples of left, right, left, right. Malina Moy and Jimmy Haslip are lefties playing lefty instruments, but reversing the strings, LLLR. And Andy McCluskey is a rare but not solitary example of a right-handed person playing a left-handed guitar, right-handed with left-handed stringing. These are all idiodexterous musicians, but each group's primary handedness approach is a different HIOS category. Take a moment to think about how you would classify yourself. That was a longer moment than I meant. Of course, RRRR is the predominant classification among all musicians. A statistical overview of the prominence of each configuration is another long-term quantitative goal of mine. So, handedness is biological. The way we hold an instrument is cultural, personal. Coming back to our first question, how could we look for characteristics of the brain that might predispose someone to adopt an idiodexterous approach? Just as the HIOS system classifies types of handedness approaches to string instrument performance, Dr. Chris McManus lays out how the concept of cerebral polymorphisms can classify different lateralization distributions that a particular set of functional modules, such as those for aspects of language, practice, and visuospatial functioning, may take in our brains. His meta-analysis shows that increasing numbers of qualitatively different lateral organizations of cognitive functions are being found, and that these polymorphisms are more frequent in left-handers than they are in right-handers. Similarly, a fascinating 2019 study from Jaume I University and the University of Barcelona found evidence of a higher prevalence of atypical language dominance across the lateralized brain among left-handed musicians in particular. These papers illuminate a path forward. I aim to one day collaborate on similar studies limited to the brains of idiodexterous musicians, whatever their biological handedness. The second direction I can think of approaching this question from is can playing idiodextrously affect the brain? Many musicians who play either left-handed instruments or idiodextrously have a primary HIOS configuration and a secondary one. Danica and Francesca primarily play LLLL, but they also explore LR-LR as part of their practice-based research. A much more common iteration of this is the frequency with which musicians who play left-handed instruments encounter the practical need to borrow someone's right-handed instrument and play it upside down. Jennifer Lightham is one of several interviewees who have mentioned that when she plays a right-handed bass idiodextrously for pragmatic reasons, it sometimes makes her feel dizzy. When returning to her usual left-handed instrument, she describes the feeling as something akin to vertigo, as if switching between the two ways of playing had somehow messed up her brainwaves. This begs the question, what effect might the inversion of our sense of up and down in terms of pitch have on our visuospatial perception of up and down? It's daunting to think of taking on these neuroscientific questions as part of a musicology PhD. However, the goal here is not to conduct an in-depth neurological study, but rather to design an experiment and test its feasibility for future study. Here's my current proposal. For simplicity's sake, the first test subject would be me. I take my left-handed acoustic bass over to the Autònoma's neuroscience department. I also take over an exact copy of that bass that maybe the research project wants to buy from me with the order of the strings reversed. I put an fMRI neural cap on my head, a magnetic resonance imaging device that measures brain activity while subjects carry out tasks they couldn't do lying down inside a scanner. The F stands for functional. I take the first bass and I play up and down 2 octaves of the F major scale at 60 beats per minute, and I do this 30 times for redundancy. Then I take the other bass and I do exactly the same thing, but with the stringing reversed, 30 times. The repetition is important because A, we want a more reliable data set, and B, with fMRI caps, we usually have to sacrifice resolution in either time or space in favor of the other. In this case, we are most interested in the spatial dimension to see whether there is any noticeable difference in brain module activation between the two ways of playing. In short, can we see my sense of up and down flipping? Of course, I'm very ready for our neuroscience colleagues to help make this design more robust, just as I will be fully relying on them to actually read the data output. In fact, in August of this year, I will be posing these very questions to the interdisciplinary scientific experts gathered at the North Sea Meeting on Laterality. I've been invited there by Dr. Chris McManus himself so that we might present a pair of complementary papers together, and I'm looking forward to getting plenty of insightful feedback and suggestions. It's still very early days for these research questions. They may well be novel ideas, which is a point in their favor. What is absolutely certain is that they are ultra niche areas of study, which makes things like funding and collaboration a challenge. And yet, look at this amazing group of people. I couldn't be more encouraged by the fact that we are here today, nerding out together on this and related topics. What a joy. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much, Greg. We are, of course, over time, but maybe 1 or 2 questions, just if it's something specific. If it's something longer, maybe we can leave it for the round table. It's going to be after Francesca's presentation, so if there's anything quick, please go ahead and ask.
If not, we have a long time for the round table, so.
I don't have any quick one.
Great. Yes, please.
In your research,
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, if I understood correctly, you try to adopt an intersectional methodology, or way of collecting the data and analyzing the data. And yeah, I'm curious to know how many individuals or musicians have you found? How is the variety, and how it's easy for you to find this diversity of idiodextrous musicians in terms of gender, ethnicity, culture, and so on? Because it's an amazing project, but I suppose there are some limitations in that sense. That they're not depend on you, maybe. So I would like to know how is that process, how you deal with it.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a very good one because, as obviously as we mentioned, this is a very niche subset of musicians within the subset of humans that are musicians within other subsets. So the sample size is a challenge. I do want to say that currently on the idiodextrous.com website, plug, there are more than 200 musicians that I've found so far that play idiodextrously that have at least enough online presence for someone on the other side of the world to be researching them and find evidence of them speaking in interviews, of their actual performance, and other historical documents if they are no longer with us. So plus, I can tell you from the hours and hours spent combing the YouTube comment sections of videos posted by more prominent upside down musicians, that I'm not afraid to say, even in this academic context, there are thousands of people in their bedrooms playing instruments upside down. So the challenge is, in the also limited scope of the time that I have for this PhD, how will I find those people? How will I reach out to them? I think the questionnaire realistically is the best way to try to get a lot of data. The questionnaire is divided into explicitly into quantitative questions that ask biographical information, people's handedness approaches, things like that. And then the qualitative section gives people a lot of free text space to tell their story, because that's very important to me. And I will put in the hours to read those stories, find the common threads. And it's an interesting question that I haven't spent enough time investing in yet as to where the line is for me as a researcher, because we know that with our own research, we have to feel happy and like it represents us and like we are taking care of ourselves with our research. I need to find the point at which I'm comfortable asking people those questions, and the point at which I honestly don't care personally about your gender, your ethnicity, from the sense of loving your music. But I do care about it if it's important to you. So I want to create the space for people to share that information, but I don't know if I'll ever get to a stage where I send out a questionnaire where questions that I, cis, white, male, I need to study the technology, the terminology, but where I will write questions for people who identify as female, saying, and how do you think that your experience of being female has affected your, I don't know, any aspect of your musicianship, your career? I am really, really interested in those things, but I would love some expert support for those kinds of things, for example. Do we have time for one more? Not very short.
Very short.
I'll try to answer. Yeah.
Like you explained about this fMRI, MRT thing.
Yeah.
EEG thing. So you said you will play F major scale.
Yeah.
2 octaves.
Yeah.
And if you switch, you will play it sounding in F major.
Yes.
Scale? Okay.
Good question. Similar to Francesca's question for Danica this morning.
Regarding that experiment, I think that will have to be designed in conjunction with the neurologists, the scientists, of course. And also, because I think there would be, if you go ahead and do an experiment and you set all that up, I think it's easy to do something more than just playing the F major scale.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But we have to, that depends on, time and space and, in the laboratory and the equipment and the scientists and all that. But I think it would be interesting to do something with this scale. But it depends, of course, on a lot of factors. But I think it's that designing the experiment, I think is difficult until we've had some feedback and some contact with the actual,
our colleagues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who know exactly what will come up.
Yeah.
On the data. And then regarding, the people data set, 200 is great for quantitative. 200, I don't think it's feasible for qualitative.
Right. I'm trying.
It's just a PhD,
Yeah. It's the.
You're not going to be, I think a smaller subset for the qualitative, and 200 is good for quantitative. It's more than enough.
I've got postdoc research projects coming up my ears. I'm set for life in terms of analyzing that data.
That's how you think about it.
Yeah, just to quickly, I remember we spoke about this, that the design of the experiment, you can replace the F major scale there. It's there as a placeholder to say something very simple, because with those kinds of things, it's very important that you have pretty tight controls. Like they might say, F major scale, 2 octaves, let's try a fifth, let's try 2 notes, up and down. Something, and I would love to do something related to improvisation eventually, but I just got to get the money and the, and the lab time and all those kinds of things to make even the first one a reality, and then hopefully pass it to some neuroscience colleagues.
Yes, but I mean, it's something we discussed, but I think the thing is, they will think of it from a neurological standpoint.
Yeah.
And that has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Because as musicians, we have other input that they're not thinking about. And
Yeah.
I say that from listening to to conferences in music neurology and music psychology. A lot of them don't really think about the music.
Yeah. So we might have to push back and find that balance a bit.
You have to find something that actually is interesting from a musical perspective.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay. This is for you.
Thank you. Should I introduce as well?
I'm just going to quickly ask these people if they would mind.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, do you want to use the keyboard? Yeah, right.
Sí, es que encaraba que era la Francesca. Tenemos que alguien más So yes, we're running a little bit late. We have our last speaker on laterality and handedness, which is Francesca Naibo, Italian guitarist, improviser, and researcher. So she has studied in Venice, Milan, Bern, and Basel. She had graduated in classical guitar, improvisation, and she's going to present this wonderful talk about flipping the guitar. So we're going back to the guitar where we started. So she's currently developing a PhD at Siena Jazz University. So that's the context of her talk now. Thank you. Go ahead, Francesca.
Okay, so good morning everyone. Thank you for staying here until the very last presentation. I'm really happy to be here, and it's been a very inspiring morning so far. I noted a lot of things that just are gonna be included or in my research, and I'm pretty sure they're all gonna be quoted somewhere in my papers or so. So thank you for sharing your researches, and also thank you for the people who are listening. So I'll try to be as concise as possible. And flipping the guitar is one of the topics that are part of my PhD research in Siena Jazz. And this topic has become very important and present in the way I am trying to build and explore an approach to the use of the guitar for free improvisation. Free improvisation is a non-idiomatic way of improvising using any instrument, and my project aims to go over the barrier of technical posture and specific tradition we have on an instrument such as mine, the guitar, so that I can try to use the instrument in many different postures and technical settings, keeping in mind that the guitar is apparently a symmetrical instrument, but it has a lot of asymmetrical parts within it, and also the way we use our body is asymmetrical. So today I would like to focus on this topic of flipping the guitar, talking about historical and contemporary approaches on the use of the classical guitar. Maybe in the afternoon we could talk about this painting. It has a very curious story, but it's not relevant at the moment. So this is a very important quote from a book by Marina Abramović, the famous artist. It's from her autobiography. So one of her arts teacher once told her, if you get so good at drawing with your right hand that you can even make a beautiful sketch with your eyes closed, you should immediately change to your left hand to avoid repeating yourself. When I read it, I was shocked because I recognized that was talking to me about something about my way of playing. And so, as many other lefty musicians have for sure done, we usually go back to our experience. And so I thought about how during my musical education, I've always looked at myself in the mirror, and what I saw was this. But actually, this is me. So, yeah, through my research, I'm aiming to somehow giving a voice to this other Francesca and to hear what she can do with the guitar held in another way. So, as we have said, the guitar is it a symmetrical instrument? For some way it is. This is the project by Antonio de Torres. He was the inventor of the contemporary classical guitar. This was a huge change in the technology of our instrument. But as you can see, the shape of the guitar is symmetrical, but within it we have a lot of asymmetrical elements. And I'm also glad that Greg shared some hints about the internal and external asymmetries that I have to admit I have not researched yet, but I will for sure. So thank you for the hint. Sorry, these are my sketches, but basically, as you can see, both our body and our instrument have an axial symmetry, but there is a very peculiar spatial asymmetry in the way we orient the guitar in space. And we also have a postural and gestural asymmetry in the way the two hands are positioned into different ways, and they do different movements. So at first I was just considering this asymmetry, but through the research I realized there is so much more. And of course we have a lot of options and change. So yeah, this is just an explanation of what I've just told you. And there is a very important connection between bodies and instruments. This is very important, not only in my research, but in the research of many people who are investigating this topic. A highly recommended paper by Amy Brandon and David Westwood is How the Guitar Shapes Us. And this has a lot to do with what also Laila shared, because when we think of the movements we do when we play an instrument, they are very complex and they involve different parts of our bodies. And so keeping in mind that it's not only about the instrument, but it's also about the body that uses it, because the instrument is a tool, that is very important. Also, we have to bear in mind that the instrument is a technological tool, but they are also cognitive tools or epistemic tools which produce musical knowledge. This was written by Jonathan de Souza in his impressive guitar thinking perspective from music theory and cognitive science. And of course, he quotes Gibson and his concept of the instrument affordances. What are they? An object's affordances are its possibilities for action. For example, a guitar affords playing and a chair affords sitting. Of course, they have other affordances too. I could also stand on the chair, use it to prop up my sheet music, and so forth. All of these possibilities depend on the object's properties and also my abilities. The chair does not afford sitting for a newborn baby, and the guitar is not playable for a goldfish. Affordances, then, are fundamentally relational. So this is a very quick overview of various types of left-handedness on the guitar. So quoting Greg and his idiodextrous concept, I put a picture of Jeffrey Lockhart as an example of an idiodextrous guitar player. Here is one of my favorite guitar players in the world, Mark Ribot. He's a lefty, but he plays the guitar right-handed. And he's a great guitar player, like other manis. And here, the Australian Courtney Barnett, she's a so-called legit guitarist. So she's a lefty and she plays a left-handed guitar. So through my research and through this analysis I'm showing to you, I am exploring how guitarists, but also composers, are actually using different postures. And so this is what we are used to see almost all the time, a sitting right-handed position or a standing right-handed position. But we can also have their mirrored options, so the sitting left-handed, the standing left-handed, but also the sitting horizontal, left-handed and right-handed. This is pretty much used for guitarists who play the lap guitar, but also guitarists who are active in the experimental and for improvisation scene. And also, why not a sitting vertical posture? So this is what I started from. But as I mentioned, the historical approaches, of course, I had to investigate how historical guitar methods explained the topic of the posture. So these are the ones where I found interesting insights. And at the time, in the 20th century, there was a very specific, in-depth and scientific approach to the art of playing the guitar. As you can see from Fernando Sor's method, he offers a lot of pictures and reflections on how our body is built and how the approach we have in relation to the holding the instrument. So Ferdinando Carulli describes how a guitar player should hold the guitar. And this is very much the basic sitting right-handed position, so to say. But then if we go on, Matteo Carcassi in his Metodo Completo, he points out that 3 points of support to the instruments are offered by this position and balances it so as not to require the support of the hands. So that posture is not casual. It was very well planned and designed so that the hands of the guitar players are free to move. Then Dionisio Aguado, in his Escuela de la Guitarra, explains that the functions of both hands are reciprocal. So if one of them fails in its task, even if the other performs its function well, the effect will not be as desired. So both hands are needed to produce sound. This may sound traditional, but it's a very, very important affirmation in terms of the classical guitar technique. And last but not least, again, Dionisio Aguado in his Nuevo Método para Guitarra, he states that the guitar is suited to improvisation, which is, of course, interesting to me, but he also affirms that perfection consists in the fact that both hands work completely independently of each other, because they are doing two very different actions. They have different roles. So let's go now to the contemporary approaches, because of course the traditional posture has always been present, used, and very much investigated. But some composers tried something different, and I would like to share with you these pieces. So one approach is to have the guitar horizontal, and this was an option that Giacinto Scelsi, an Italian composer, decided to explore through his Kota, 3 dances of Shiva, for guitar used as a percussion instrument. So we don't have the time to explain how the piece was born and so on, but in the score, Scelsi writes that the guitarist has to hold the guitar horizontal on their lap. So you have to be sitting, holding the guitar on your lap. And the hands produce both percussive sounds on the body of the instruments and pluck the strings, but only open strings. So there are many videos of guitarists playing just as I described, but this one is very peculiar. This is Elena Casoli. She's a great guitar player, and she came up with this option to have 2 guitars, one for the percussive sounds and one for the plucking sounds, so that there is this symmetry and this, as the piece is called 3 dances, the movement of the body of the performer is more involved. I can show you a little bit. Oopsie. Oh, here it is, here. So we prepared okay, just a glimpse. Sorry, maybe I can skip to a more percussive section of the piece that is more... Again, not here, sorry. And so on. I highly recommend you to watch this video if you're interested. It's a great piece. Of course, Scelsi was very much influenced by Orient, and so there is also a very strong connection with many concepts that go away from the topic of studying and practicing a piece. It's more about understanding this ritual, the meaning of everything. So let's go on with our next approach, the front back guitar. This is something very rare to see, which is basically having the guitar flipped on its axial, on its axis. So you have the strings close to your body and the back of the guitar facing the audience. This is a short capriccio written by Maurizio Pisati, again an Italian composer. Of course, he was inspired by the capriccios by Francisco Goya. And this one is, was inspired by Bravissimo, which was projected here by the guitar player Virginia Arancio. And what did Maurizio Pisatti think of? Both hands have percussive sounds, but the left hand, so the fretting hand of this guitar player, is also producing tones from behind the neck. Oops. Sorry to interrupt, but it's because we don't have so much time. But the relationship with the painting is amazing because actually there is a monkey holding a guitar just like that. We can talk more over lunch about that if you're interested. But yeah, this is interesting because a new situation, a new posture created a new language. Then we have this, what I defined the virtual guitar. This is Study for String Instrument number 3 by Simon Steen Andersen, which can be both performed by a cello or by a guitar. Unfortunately, there are no high quality videos on YouTube of guitar players playing that, so I had to go for a cello version by Jennifer Beverse. And what is interesting here is that the performer plays while at the same time a video, a pre-recorded video of the very same person is projected on the person itself. So there is a dialogue between the real performer and the pre-recorded performer. And this is very interesting because at some point you don't understand really from which performer the sound comes from. But so this composer has a very deep interest in the choreographic aspect of a performance. So this is why he chose this. But also he likes to show the instruments and the tools from which the sound originates. I should go maybe more to the forward where the instrument is moved. And so on. let's go to the last two approaches I would like to show you. Again, a piece for guitar played using the bow. This is Preludio by, again, an Italian composer, Rosalba 15, played by Ruben Mattia Santorsa. This is a very short piece, and Rosalba 15 has a strong interest in investigating the use of the guitar through the bow. So I asked Ruben how the choice of this posture arrived, because you can see there is the vertical guitar, but the strings and the whole are facing the performer. And he told me he proposed this solution to the composer, and she agreed. So let's have a look on how it looks and sounds, of course. And so on. Of course, the choice of such a posture does not derive from wanting to do something strange, but using the bow, just as the cello needs a certain movement, and it would be theoretically possible to do that with a guitar in the standard posture, but maybe the effectiveness of the sound would not be what the guitar player can achieve through such a posture. So let's go to my project, which, as I have already mentioned, involves the use of many different postures, and to use them as tools just as preparations or extended techniques. My project started from a graphic score I composed called Circular Asymmetry, where I included all the postures I mentioned earlier, and I connected them through a sequence, and I usually start from this top posture with the guitar vertical and following this path. The original score reported this request: explore each position for maximum 2 minutes, use only the guitar and your hands. But of course, through time, this changed. So I chose 2 recent performances I did. They are quite different for some aspects. So the first one was played without an audience, the second one with an audience. And here the focus was very strong on the movements and the having each section defined by an ending, a silence, and then the change of the posture. I had also worked with the help of a dancer, and she helped me to find ways to have these changes from one posture to the other very clear and well done, let's say, in her own, following her indications. Whereas here, I did a long, continuous performance with no stops, so the changes between the different sections were made continuing playing the instrument. And I used some preparations here, whereas here not. And in the last one, this is very recent, like 1 month ago, the focus on the movement was not as strong as the focus on the musical material. Just, two quick examples. So this is the one more focused on the movement, let's say. So this is the first part with a vertical guitar. And the change from this position to the second is here. And so on. And very quickly going to the very last one. I can provide these links if you're interested, of course. And I can show you one transition from one section to the other. Let's say. Oops, not working. Sorry, because of time, we will do this here. So from the vertical to the horizontal. So what you saw is that my right-handed was keeping scratching the string while the left hand arrived and started playing some harmonics. And to conclude, are there any questions? Of course, you can see there were many common elements such as the use of the bow and the percussive sounds and so. But yeah, I'm sure that all the different approaches I've been studying are influencing and giving me hints for new creative approaches on the guitar. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much for this morning. It's been rather busy. It's been a real pleasure. For me, it's something I'm brand new, although I've been left-handed all my life. But there are some questions that I've never really thought about that, and today you gave me a really good motive to start at least thinking about it, and I'm going to point you a little bit so you can bring me all your knowledge about this. I think my only achievement here is being left-handed, but that's why all my questions will be out of curiosity. You are the expert, so please go ahead. If you have any questions to each other, that will be really more interesting than the ones I can do for you. Being here, gathered with such an amazing group of experts in handedness, it's really an opportunity. I don't want to introduce you because we've been talking with you all morning. So what do you think about there's been any misconception about left-handed musicians that the research have still challenged now? Is there anyone that want to answer that?
Possibly everyone, but who wants to go first? Would you like to speak about? can I get you to hold?
Okay,
this one
yes,
when you're
absolutely.
asking
Ah,
questions?
okay, perfect. So,
Yeah, you got some things.
No,
okay, Laila,
actually,
you go.
I didn't get the question at all. Some misconceptions.
Yes, in the some research or academic papers or wherever you have read on, what do you think there's something missing or any point that you would like to make on?
There are some research work had been neurological research in Hanover. So they just researched in the music conservatories and found out that there are quite a lot of left-hand musicians. So they say it's not a problem for them to play right-handed because there are already many of them there. And so that now they say it's closed. We don't research anymore. But they never researched about left-handers who play left-handed. There was just one pianist, Christopher Seed from England, and they did some research with his brain, and they found out that he was using the same brain functions playing left and right-handed because he was playing both-handed, and but he himself felt more comfortable in the left-handed piano, and he was playing better by heart and by notations. So they say it's a very special brain conception he has, and it's very dangerous that children start playing left-handed because it's not at all researched, but we don't do any more research because it's finished. So they try to finish the whole topic. So I think they have to open up. They have now to start a research. And in April, I met him at the music fair in Nuremberg, and we talked. And I asked him, "Do you think you have a very special brain connection with the, like Greg showed, with the language part and so on?" He says, "No, I think many left-handed people have especially this arrangement." So they just tried to exclude him and say it's very special, and for every other person it's dangerous. So I think we have to open up, we have to do research, we have to find out, because before that no one can say what is good for us. And I think they might be left-handers, it's better for them to play like right-handers. I always tell parents when they ask me, is your child a child which needs to be like all the others? Or is this an extravagant child which has no problem to be different? Because even these points are so important for children, how the character is and how they interact with their surrounding. So there should be many ways, but this way should not be excluded.
Absolutely. All of you made a choice. I didn't, so it's kind of interesting. Like, is there any other research challenge that you find? For me, it's very interesting that we are here from an arts and humanities point of view, but I think many of the previous research, I don't know if I'm mistaken, it's from neurological and scientific point of view. Probably there's still missing some kind of connection with the real artists and the people who plays and not only their brains. I'm not sure if you want to put anything on that, any opinion or?
Yeah, I think you've identified something that is one of the reasons why we're here today, right? Is because we're trying to bridge that gap, as well as address many other things, as many aspects as we can fit between the four of us, and hopefully more people will join in the conversation. It's true that there are some studies that have looked at brain activity, at lateralization, at handedness and musicianship, but they're so precious to us because there are so few. And we have this replication crisis that we need to be able to replicate these studies to really be able to trust and delve into the data, as well as wanting to devise our own studies. So yes, it's a very underexplored field, which is, I don't know if you have had this experience, but it is a point in our favor, is that we're proposing novel ideas and novel research. It brings its own set of challenges, but it does mean that we're kind of forging our own path, as maybe we have done as musicians and people, and that's another reason why it's so special to meet other like-minded individuals and talk about it. I just wanted to really quickly bust two myths, to dispel two bits of flim-flam that do come up all the time. The first one, I think we started to, what is it, Christopher Seed? Was that the name of the pianist? That when someone has a very unusual brain distribution or a very unusual handedness, I just want to clarify, a lot of people would self-identify as being ambidextrous. And according to a lot of classifications, they would be more accurately described perhaps as mixed-handed. Actual ambidexterity, where you have, you as a person, your brain, you have zero preference for hand doing most tasks. Like, you don't mind if you write with your right hand or left hand. Not that you can do both. Some people can do both, and they might be mixed-handed, but that they might a lot of people self-describe as ambidextrous, and that's something that comes up a lot when I explain to people what I'm researching. They say, oh, maybe that means because you are right-handed but you hold the guitar in the left-handed way, that you are ambidextrous. And wow, then it's like, how much time have you got?
Yeah.
let's go get a coffee or something. And the other one, I hope I'm not stealing anyone's thunder, particularly from the guitar department. Jimi Hendrix, would you like to take it? And then I want to add something, but
sure.
please.
I was just going to say, in speaking of misconceptions, I was very frustrated to find this fact about Jimi Hendrix published in not only some articles but all over the internet, and it's a bit of a mistruth about him playing idiodextrously with the strings inverted, which he didn't, and it doesn't take much time to find that out, because if you play any of his music, if you look at pictures, look at live videos, it's very clear. There is a video of him playing with the strings inverted, but just like we have throughout our lives taken a guitar and played it upside down, I don't think that that's so unusual to see that happen. Also, the footage was he's at a party, and it's a very casual setting. So that was my Jimi Hendrix thought. Did you have something else?
Just a little tag on the end, yeah. So that footage is from backstage at a Rolling Stones concert. There's no sound. We can't hear what he's playing. We can see that he's kind of noodling, and it's very hard to draw any conclusions about whether he's comfortable playing that way in that moment or not. There are photos that have, not so much video, but photos that have surfaced of him when he was very young. He did start out playing idiodextrously, and that combined with the couple of anecdotes that have been, I was in a guitar shop in London and Jimi Hendrix came in and he just flipped over any old guitar. He did do it, he could do it, and there were enough of those anecdotes to kind of propagate this myth to the point where, as Danica mentioned, it has appeared in some academic contexts as well. But I do want to shout out a paper, I think 2015, Stephen Christman, I believe is the name, and it's an in-depth study of Jimi Hendrix's handedness story, what I would call the story of his handedness. Not a binary thing, you're either left-handed or right-handed, or maybe in a 1% of cases you're ambidextrous, but actually going into the story of his handedness. And it's possible, there are some very early photos of him signing autographs. They're not flipped photo with his right hand. Sorry, I forgot to add that key detail. He signed autographs. Wow. No, he signed autographs with his right hand, and they're not flipped photographs because there are textual references that you can see. Nerds like us that constantly check photos to see if they're flipped, you learn to see, is there a logo on the shirt or a painting in the background with the artist's name? And you can see the iconography is also very important, right? You can also see, okay, no, these are photos of him signing autographs with his right hand. And it begs the question about his family upbringing. Was he right-handed but then somehow rebelled, or was he naturally left-handed but forced to play right-handed is the more typical narrative historically, yes. Right? So that paper is incredible. It delves really, really deep. It also then goes on to make some connections between his playing style and even his compositional style being related to his handedness in his brain, that I'm not sure that I fully buy that narrative, or at least that's something that it's really hard to study with someone who's not alive anymore. Even with someone who is alive, it would be difficult to get the right experimental conditions. But nevertheless, the things that appear in the article are fascinating ideas to consider, whether someone's handedness might actually affect their improvising, their playing style for sure, but also their sense of composition, not in the way that Danica is actually actively inverting things, but more in a kind of, what's the word, in an abstract sense that, oh, he wrote songs that had these kind of chordal flourishes and these kind of melodic lines because he was a left-handed individual. And I'm not sure how we can ever know that. I love if someone says that about themselves, then I buy it, yes. But if, with all due respect, like, it's a very, very interesting paper, but it's difficult for someone not knowing the person to say that about someone else, I think.
Absolutely. And the idea of being also in your research very autoethnographic in a way, it's kind of the proof that you need your first own way of researching and knowing what you're feeling when you're playing. The way of explaining that is the way that then you can compare to other papers, to other research, and here's going on, or it's only a myth, or it's only something that's really interesting. And I have another question just to open a last topic here, because it's 5 minutes to 2 o'clock, very late. But we can probably continue that in the afternoon before the jam session. I'm going to take the advantage that I'm speaking here. It's a question from my own interest. I'm left-handed and I adapted to play violin in the traditional way. Some of the terms you brought up during the chats, like identity, playing in a traditional classic orchestra. What do you think about, it's probably very wide, so you can talk whatever you want, how this left playing handedness influences musical performance in different contexts or in different genres? I mean, it's more usual to see this kind of change in jazz or in more contemporary ensembles, but not in classical romantic orchestras that played Mozart or Beethoven. And how do you think conservatoires or other traditional music schools, not probably the ones you're studying, should have to provide more resources to give the opportunity to people discover they might be able to change? I didn't have the choice. I don't know if I would have taken it, and now 20 years playing right side, I could probably not, I just don't try to do the other way around, but probably at that time it could be interesting, but they said me that, no, that's not. I don't know if you have any ideas or concerns about that. If you want, yes.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can talk about my own experience as a classically trained guitar player. I both studied in a smaller school, a private school in my hometown, then I studied in a conservatory in Venice. And I also have to point out that my instrument is not an orchestra instrument, so I have zero experience about playing in an orchestra, unless it is a guitar orchestra. But in that situations, I was always the person like going this way. Anyways, what I can share is that there has always been a big problem with being represented by someone else. Like in my small hometown and at the conservatory in Venice, there were no lefty guitar players. So for me, it was, I mean, I was happy about my choice and feeling good about playing like that, but I had no references. I had no heroes. We can use maybe this word to refer to. And so as for many other minorities in the music world, there is this topic of having representation and having models. And this, it works for women in music, but also whatever other minorities you can think of, such as non-binary people. And so I think it's a very wide topic we have to think about, because usually the role model is a man playing in a traditional way, and whereas if the guy invents his own non-traditional approach, then he suddenly becomes a hero. And we think of these people as idols. So I don't know, it has a lot to deal with our social dynamics. So
can also be economics. I mean, a guitar is not, I don't want to say cheap, but not so expensive instrument.
Yes.
You can afford trying to change the other way. A double bass, it's kind of to buy an inverted bass will be a suicide if you finally don't decide to change the way. I don't know if that could also be another factor for that.
And what I would like to add is that yes, there is this opportunity for guitars to change this way or the other, but at the same time, it was very easy for teachers to decide, no, you're not allowed to be a lefty. I know a person who she studied classical guitar as a lefty until she was, I guess, 15 or something. Then she entered conservatory, and her teacher told her, no, you're gonna start back from the beginning as a right-handed guitar player. So
she stayed in that conservatoire?
Yeah, she even got her diploma.
I would have left.
She was very strong and determined, but yeah, I mean, maybe this is also the, pros and cons, because maybe if a person invests so much in a very special instrument, maybe the teacher would think, no, I'm not going to change it. But I don't know. This is just my supposition. So I don't know if you have any other thought.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for this question. I also heard from it that the question is whether some left-handers like traditional play right-handed, and what influence it has on the kind they play, on the feeling and so on. So we talk a lot about this among these lefty playing musicians. So some of them, they observe many musicians, even some violin players where we know they are left-handed. So I think we have a different playing style. Like if I play for the violin, for example, I can play violin only right-handed. I often tried it left-handed, but it's not comfortable for me. In this instrument, I would not change now. But I have, and I think some left-playing musicians, left-handers who play right-handed, use sometimes more the body and the violin to move, and not only the bow. Mm-hmm. So we can maybe have a different style of making music. Even many composers, as we know, on the piano were left-handers. Rachmaninoff was left-handed. Chopin maybe left-handed. They say Mozart, Bach, Beethoven. I don't know exactly, but when I play Rachmaninoff now on the left-handed piano, or Chopin, for example, my right hand has really a lot of things to do. And so I think it's very interesting, and I think it influenced always the music, because many musicians had been left-handed, and although they lived in their time and had their composition rules, I think there was the influence, like giving the bass more movements, and I think they made a development in music. So yeah, maybe it would be a loss if all left-handers would play left-handed and all right-handers right-handed. But I think one point is whether it's comfortable for one. And if we if I played right-handed and played a lot like an orchestra, I had so many pains in my arm. It was so exhausting and all these things. So when I heard dealing with this topic, when my parents said, we wanted you to play left-handed, but the teacher, she was so young and she said, no, we do it only if you have an injury on the left hand, so I don't teach you. And you get rejected from some I know who now studied left-handed. They got so many rejections until they found a teacher who said, yes, I will teach you that way. So, so most of them, they didn't have the opportunity, like you said. And I think each body will find its way. Yeah, so maybe it's a different style, and actually everyone has a different style, but I think it's manageable, but maybe with some pains, which should not be. Yeah.
Absolutely. One.
I actually
So
have a
we
question
can have
for
one
you.
intervention more, then yeah.
Want to say something?
I have a question as well, but if not, we can do it at lunch.
Okay. Yeah.
Please.
I was just thinking about your answer to this question, and I too, when I was studying classical guitar at a conservatorium, I wasn't told that it was bad. I was playing left-handed, but I was told by the teacher at some other conservatories you wouldn't be allowed to play like this, and I found that amusing because, like you mentioned, it's not an orchestral instrument. It's a lot of solo repertoire. Maybe some chamber music works, but it should not matter at all. And I was also playing always with the strings in the standard order, so it really, from my perspective, I feel like I'm playing exactly the same as a right-handed musician. I don't feel any differentiation personally. It's just on a personal level. I didn't find it too interesting in a way, and some people would, or when I play a concert, lots of people like to come up to me afterwards and make the same joke, which is, oh, you're playing upside down, or you're playing the wrong way. And I didn't find it too interesting. What I find very, very interesting is thinking about some creative ways, basically being inspired by idiodexterous players, because that blows my mind to see how people can play on this completely new instrument without sort of history to lean on, to understand what's going on. And that's also a big gap for me when researching. I found a lot of information about logistical details, like the knobs of the guitar being on the wrong side, or the cutaway and the fret markers and all this information, but I couldn't find information about musically what was happening. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So that's a wrap now. Fantastic. Thank you so much for all your interventions. This was really delightful to hear you all. Please give them an applause.